Chapter 1048. The words that Li Cheng and Yang Chen's family said. Yingmei was not qualified to listen at all and could not hear it all. The restrictions arranged by Li Cheng could not be broken by any cat or dog. Although Yingmei was already a master of the Deshang stage, no one present had put him in their eyes alone. The four women were surprised to find that Li Cheng's knowledge was not even less than their husband's. When Li Cheng killed the great elder of the Taishaman with a sword, the four women were not there and did not see Li Cheng's prestige. Now, they had a better understanding of Li Cheng. Since it was regarded as a brother, Yang Chen naturally no longer concealed his identity and told Li Cheng the true identity of the four women. Li Cheng also said his family's origin. What surprised Yang Chen and the four women was that Li Cheng turned out to be from an ancient family. Strictly speaking, he was just a rogue cultivator. A rogue cultivator family could have such a deep heritage. If it was known to the outside world, it would definitely attract some people from the big sect to come to their door and seize these inheritances in their hands. They just didn't know how Li Cheng's family bypassed these big sect. The four women cultivated under the guidance of Li Cheng and Yang Chen had already begun the process of absorbing and integrating the Red Lotus Hellfire. The absorption of the 5th grade fire seed, Yang Chen was cautious. With the help of the fire control technique given by Li Cheng, Yang Chen put a wisp of the Red Lotus Hellfire into his body. The fire control technique was just a technique, but in his own body, it still depended on his spiritual awareness and state of mind. Especially the Hellfire, there couldn't be any hesitation in his heart. As long as there was an interruption, he would be burned by the Hellfire immediately. Even if Yang Chen already had the embryonic form of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire, he still couldn't escape this fate. During the absorption process, there couldn't be any interference. Yang Chen was clear about this, and Li Cheng was even clearer. So Li Cheng was very dedicated to protecting Yang Chen and placed Yang Chen in a special formation. This formation was really powerful. When a monstrous demonic qi encountered it, it seemed to have encountered an obstacle and couldn't penetrate at all. Not only that, the sound vibration of the outside world couldn't reach Yang Chen's ears at all. Even the formation had a super strong defensive function. Even if 2 Deshang stage demonic beasts hit it, it would not have the slightest effect. The 5th grade fire seed was completely different from the 4th grade fire seed. The power was almost dozens of times. Just the moment when the flame entered the body, even with Yang Chen's ability to control the fire seed, it was almost buried by the severe pain. Fortunately, Yang Chen's will was not generally strong. He endured the pain and sent the Red Lotus Hellfire into the Yin fire of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire, according to the usual way of fusing the fire seeds. The Yin fire seemed to be suffering from pain, constantly twisting madly, but under Yang Chen's strict control, it continued to absorb a wisp of flame. Finally, after a period of extreme pain, the small flame was integrated into the Yin fire. The Yin fire seemed to be suffering and kept twisting madly, but under the strict control of Yang Chen, it continued to absorb a wisp of flame. Finally, after a period of extreme pain, the little flame was integrated into the Yin fire. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Around Yang Chen, suddenly an abnormality began to appear. A blooming red lotus tightly wrapped Yang Chen in it. If someone could get close to Yang Chen, they would definitely find that all the petals of this red lotus were made up of flames. At first, the red lotus still seemed a little rough, but slowly it began to become fine, and in the end, it was simply lifelike. Yang Chen's body swayed slightly, and the red lotus also swayed with Yang Chen's body, swaying and swaying, just like a living thing. The four women outside naturally saw this scene and were at a loss. They all cast doubtful eyes on Li Cheng. Li Cheng looked at this scene, but nodded repeatedly. Not bad. This Red Lotus Hellfire can be absorbed and integrated in just half a year. I really did not read the wrong person. Li Cheng was also a little surprised at Yang Chen's speed, but thinking about Yang Chen's Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire, it seemed that this performance was normal. The Red Lotus Fire, Yang Chen only had one last wisp of flame left, and the entire absorption and integration process would be completed. After half a year of fusion, Yang Chun was already at the point of perfection. He was very familiar with the flame into the Yin fire, and the whole process was over. Just as he was about to get up, his sea of consciousness suddenly shook. The cyan Yin fire dragon in his sea of consciousness suddenly turned into a golden lotus, no longer in the shape of a fire dragon. The whole sea of consciousness seemed to be blown by an invisible breeze. It was indescribably clean and comfortable. Under the blowing of this breeze, the spiritual awareness began to improve steadily. With the strengthening of the sea of consciousness, the cultivation of the spiritual awareness smoothly rose to the 3rd grade of human immortal. However, after only absorbing the red lotus hellfire, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire was already a little unbalanced, so Yang Chun did not get up and directly began the integration and absorption of the peach blossom hellfire. The process was basically the same, but after experiencing the baptism of the red lotus hellfire, Yang Chun's endurance and willpower had also greatly improved. It was much easier to absorb the peach blossom hellfire. In just half a year, a flaming peach blossom formed outside Yang Chun's body. At the moment when it was completely absorbed and integrated, the Yang fire dragon of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire in the sea of consciousness also turned into a pink peach blossom. His spiritual awareness improved again, the 4th grade of human immortal. The promotion was so smooth that Yang Chun couldn't believe it. Even if he had a similar experience when he absorbed the sun's true fire in his previous life, it was only from the early yuanying stage to the middle yuanying stage. How could it be like now? He was still in the mortal world, but his spiritual awareness had already been upgraded to the 4th grade of human immortal. A 5th grade fire seed was a 5th grade fire seed. It was completely different from a 4th grade fire seed. Of course, Yang Chun also understood that for the 4th grade and lower fire seeds, when fusing with the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, it was just laying the foundation. Now, it was the real time to reflect the power of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Li Chung had already discovered the changes in Yang Chun. After he calmed down completely, he released the formation. Because of the formation, this area was already a demonic chi vacuum. As soon as the formation was opened, the surrounding demonic chi was like a shark smelling the smell of blood, rushing towards Yang Chun. Quietly, 2 flowers appeared outside Yang Chun's body, a peach blossom and a lotus flower. As soon as the demonic chi touched these 2 flowers, it was like white snow meeting the sun. It melted and disappeared silently, leaving no trace. No wonder Li Chung said that these 2 kinds of hellfire were the most suitable flames in the demon continent. This kind of innate restraint was really extraordinary. As long as the 2 kinds of hellfire were around him, even if Yang Chun had no other protection, he would definitely be unscathed under the demonic chi. Chapter 1049. With this hellfire for self-defense, we can go to that place. Li Chung didn't say much, but it was difficult to hide his appreciation. However, the words revealed that the place they were going to was very dangerous. Yang Chun would doubt if Li Chung had already been to that place. Otherwise, how could he be so well prepared? The 4 women's experience for more than a year was also fruitful. Deep in the demon continent, the enemy was much stronger than their cultivation base. Every day was an extreme challenge. If it weren't for Li Cheng's protection at the critical moment, maybe the 4 women would have already died. However, this extreme killing experience had extraordinary effects. Every day, they wandered on the line of death, which almost stimulated all the potential of the 4 women. The killing skills of the 4 women were simply improving rapidly. Each person faced 4 or 5 early Deshang stage demonic beasts, and they did not fall into a disadvantage. The previous experience arranged by Yang Chun was relatively safe, and the 4 women wanted to cultivate on their own and did not want Yang Chun to take care of them, so it could only be said that they followed the rules step by step. The current situation, because of the changes, had to use this method similar to killing the goose that laid the golden eggs to force out the potential of the 4 women. Otherwise, the 4 women would become Yang Chun's burden in the next event. Fortunately, there was Li Chung. He seemed to be more proficient in all kinds of killing skills than Yang Chun. Every time the 4 women took a break, he would summarize and point out to the four women, so that their experience also increased rapidly. Everyone finally set foot on the road to the valley again. The sad shadow demon, during this year, obediently served as the nanny of the four women and did not dare to slack off at all. The masters of the Deshang stage were reduced to such a state, people couldn't help but sigh. On the way, everyone once again unified their statements. In fact, they mainly wanted the shadow demon to have an explanation, so that when he faced his companions, he could find a reasonable excuse for everyone's delay of a year. The next step was a smooth journey. Yang Chen's yin-yang heaven-burning fire was carefully released on both sides of the ship. The demonic qi in the way seemed to have met its nemesis, not to mention affecting the people on the ship. Even approaching the ship was impossible. It had been a long time since the nine-nether flying sword had absorbed devil qi. The deeper they went into the continent, the denser the devil qi became. Of course, Yang Chen would not let go of such an opportunity. The nine-nether flying sword was at the bow of the ship, constantly absorbing devil qi along the way. This time, it took them a few months to reach their destination, the valley. Of course, when they were still some distance away from the valley, Gong Sumling put away the ship and concealed their auras. Yingmei once again became a master who dominated everything, while Yang Chun, Li Cheng, and the other four women became pitiful worms who were coerced by Yingmei. After entering the valley and seeing the scene inside, everyone could not help but feel a little surprised. No matter who saw such a big valley with thousands of masters of the Deshang stage, it was estimated that they would have this feeling. Yang Chun and the others also appropriately showed the nervousness and restraint of a few nascent soul stage juniors when they suddenly saw so many powerful seniors. They curled up behind Yingmei and did not dare to say a word. Why did it take so long? Someone was obviously a little impatient from waiting. It has been more than a year since Yingmei sent back the news. For such a long time, according to Yingmei's speed, he could crawl back. As he spoke, he had already released a powerful pressure, which firmly enveloped Yang Chun and the others. It seemed that he wanted to directly give them a show of strength. There is no way this little guy has not seen the world. He has only dealt with the devil qi on the periphery. Yingmei replied very casually, without revealing any flaws. At the same time, with a wave of his hand, the other party's pressure disappeared. I can only let him adapt to the increasingly thick devil qi in a period of time. And by the way, see if he can really purify the devil qi. Don't do it casually. How can you work if you scare people? As he said this, Yingmei was really shocked in his heart. If the two evil stars, Yang Chun and Li Cheng, were to attack, he wouldn't dare to say anything else. At least he would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. What is the result? The other party did not care about his pressure being swept away, but was very interested in Yingmei's statement and immediately began to ask for the result. Not bad. At least after a little adaptation along the way, he is no longer afraid of the devil qi. Yingmei deliberately replied lightly. Then what are you waiting for? Let's start. Listening to Yingmei's words, someone immediately became a little impatient and shouted. It seemed that these people had been waiting for hundreds of years, and when they heard that there was hope of a solution, they were a little anxious. Wait! Just as Yingmei was planning to push the boat with the current and put forward Yang Chen's request, someone in the depths of the valley shouted, "What does Brother Qian want?" Before Yingmei spoke, someone had already frowned and asked, "He is just not afraid of the devil qi, but I don't know if he can purify the door." The person called Brother Qian also had a black veil covering his face, and others couldn't see his face clearly. The whole person seemed to be hidden in the black mist, and the yin qi was dense, which made people uncomfortable. Once it fails but the door is damaged, how can he, a little yuanying stage, afford it? From the beginning to the end, these people were talking about what they were going to do, and they didn't even intend to ask the identity of the four women and Li Cheng who came with them. In their eyes, including Yang Chun, they were just tools that could be used. Who would take them seriously? When everyone heard this, they all felt that it was reasonable. Yingmei restrained his own fear, for fear that these people would speak disrespectfully, provoking Yang Chun and Li Cheng to be angry. Fortunately, Yang Chun and Li Cheng were now very cooperative, just standing quietly and not talking. It seemed that they would not attack on the spot, which made Ing Mei secretly breathe a sigh of relief. That kid, how can he prove that he can purify the devil chi? Someone immediately asked this topic. Does the purifying devil bead count? Ing Mei knew that he had to speak and hurriedly asked, what can a third or fourth grade devil bead prove? I have a first grade devil bead here. Purify one on the spot and show us. The other party seemed to have been prepared or had already planned it. He quickly took out a huge devil bead from his chinquin bag, put it in his palm, glanced at Yang Chun, and said very arrogantly, Kid, show us, do you have any use? Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yang Chun. Yang Chun didn't seem to be so afraid at the moment. He took a step forward and said with a smile, I have already agreed with Ing Mei Qianbei that there will be a reward for purifying the devil chi. As soon as the voice fell, it caused a large group of people to laugh. Chapter 1050. The guys in the valley have never seen such a funny guy. In this situation, it was like a sheep entering a wolf's den, and he was still thinking about rewards. Did this guy really train in the demon continent? How could he not even understand such a simple situation? It's okay to ask for rewards, but who are you going to kill? Someone asked loudly in the laughter of a group of people. Staying in such a ghost place for many years, every day, in addition to the demonic beasts, there were these unreliable companions. Living in fear and full of hope, it was really not a life for people to live. Suddenly, there was a guy who looked like a happy person. Finally, there was a little joy. It was unreasonable not to tease Yang Chun. Yours. Yang Chun opened his mouth with a smile. His words caused a lot of people to laugh again, and it lasted for a long time. Brush. A white light suddenly shot out from Li Cheng's hand and hit the guy who had just asked the question. In the stunned eyes and laughter of the crowd, the guy who was hit by the white light suddenly stiffened and then maintained a state of laughing wildly, motionless. All the laughter suddenly stopped, as if there was an invisible hand pinching everyone's throat. Everyone stared at the motionless guy, and their eyes were full of doubts. The rustling sound kept ringing, and in the eyes of everyone, the guy who had just asked the question began to drop a small grain of sand. First the robe, then the shoes, then the hair, and finally the flesh, all turned into a dry, fine sand and fell to the ground. An indescribable aura burst forth from that person's body. Pung! With a soft sound, his entire body completely fell apart, turning into a pile of fine sand. The fine sand then turned into a pile of ashes, and with a gust of devilish chi, the ashes quickly disappeared without a trace. Everyone involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva, even if these Deshang stage masters had not seen such a thing for a long time, without the permission of their brain. The aura that erupted from the companion just now seemed to be similar to that of the wind tribulation, and the way of turning into ashes was almost exactly the same as the failure of the tribulation. He didn't know what the white light Li Cheng shot out was, but it actually had the offensive power of the wind tribulation. All right, I'll accept your reward. What do you want to do with it? Yang Chun acted as if he didn't see the horrifying scene and asked seriously. After he asked, he seemed to remember that he had already returned to his senses. He patted his chest as if he suddenly realized something and said in a resentful tone, Really, you're such a big boss, but you don't know how to ask first before paying the price. Under the murderous gazes of the black-clothed Mayana experts, Yang Chun turned to the crowd with a calm expression and asked again, Who else wants to use your life as a reward? A master of the Middle Deshang stage was so inexplicably killed by an inexplicable junior who didn't know where he came from with an inexplicable magic weapon, and none of the masters around him recognized what it was. The only thing he was certain of was that the magic treasure seemed to be able to unleash a power similar to the wind tribulation. For experts who did not have enough power to cross the tribulation, it would definitely be a fatal blow. No one. Then I'll tell you what I'm willing to pay. Yang Chun looked around, and no one spoke. Yang Chun only thought that everyone agreed to his request for the price. Then he said what he had said to Ing Mei again. I was almost fooled by these juniors. When Yang Chun finished saying his price, After a while, someone finally said, "This kind of wind tribulation, how can you and other juniors refine it? After making this attack, how many more can you do?" When they heard this, everyone suddenly understood. Everyone was frightened by Li Cheng's wind tribulation. No one thought about how ordinary people could refine this kind of attack. Except for the masters who have passed the wind tribulation and were about to ascend, who could refine it. After crossing the tribulation, there were only dozens of breaths before they would ascend. Even if they helped the younger generation to refine this kind of attack magic weapon, how many could they refine? Maybe after making this attack, there would be no more means of attack. More than 1,000 people. How could they be frightened by such an attack? It's really a brilliant idea. Li Cheng smiled over there and raised his right hand. In his right hand, there was a snow-white jade pendant. The jade pendant flashed faintly so that everyone could see it clearly. There is indeed only one attack in it. I don't know which senior is willing to use his life in exchange for the opportunity of the seniors here. Li Cheng's words made everyone stunned in place. Indeed, Li Cheng did not have many means of attack, and now he clearly told everyone that there was only one attack left. However, which one of the people present was willing to use their own life to help others? If there was really such a selfless saint who did not think for himself, then what kind of demon sect master was he? Among the demon sect masters who could cultivate to the Deshang stage, which one of them was this kind of good person who did not care about himself? A group of masters looked at each other, and no one could say anything. Some people even began to doubt the people around them. Once someone had a bad idea and casually pushed them out to consume Li Cheng's wind tribulation, wouldn't that be terrible? For a time, the atmosphere, which was not harmonious, became more and more tense. Everyone was on guard, and no one dared to relax. Only Yingmei knew in her heart that Li Cheng did not only have a fatal blow left. If Li Cheng was willing, he could not say that he could kill all the people here, but it was definitely more than enough for one person to kill dozens of people. However, this kind of thought would only be kept in his heart and would never be revealed. Exclusive resources must be controlled exclusively. Yingmei was not a good person, and there were no close friends of Yingmei here. Why would Yingmei tell others? She might even mislead a few guys who had disagreements with her and let them go to Li Cheng's side to die. This was the way of survival for the demon sections. Some clever ones began to lean back, and the more clever ones slowly moved to the place behind the four women where Li Cheng could not see. Li Cheng alone could not completely pay attention to the movements of so many people. Moreover, everyone was afraid of Li Cheng's attack, so it was normal for them to hide. Li Cheng was a smart person, and he would not dare to easily release the last blow and let his own life-saving means fail. As a result, everyone began to be in a stalemate. In a place where Li Cheng could not notice, some seemingly normal movements of a few people had already made a few masters with tacit understanding have a new idea. Chapter 10:51. Suddenly, the four masters suddenly made a move and rushed to the four women. Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue, and Gong Sunling, who had been watching the excitement and seemed to be unprepared. It was not Li Cheng who wanted to kill people, but here they were all in the early yuanying stage. As long as any woman was caught, they would have the capital to negotiate with Yang Chun and Li Cheng. Smart people should use smart people's methods to do things. So many masters of the Deshang stage could not be threatened by a few young boys and not dare to move. Where would everyone's face go? The idea was good, the timing was good, and the target was also good. For masters of the Deshang stage came out to capture four juniors in the early yuanying stage. It should be easy if there was no tortoise shell that suddenly appeared. Outside the bodies of the four women, suddenly a huge tortoise shell appeared without warning, and several people, including the four women and Yang Chun and Li Cheng, were all wrapped up. The four masters who made a move grabbed the thick tortoise shell. There was no other result except for the pain in their arms. As soon as they failed, the four were shocked and hurriedly retreated with the fastest speed. In the blink of an eye, they rushed out of the valley. No one wanted to bear Li Cheng's fatal blow. The embarrassing movements of the four people caused the women in the tortoise shell to laugh. Yang Chun and Li Cheng shook their heads with some regret, and sighed, making people hate that they could not directly pull them out and grind their bones to ashes. Why bother? Why bother? Yang Chun shook his head and sighed with emotion. Without a magic weapon, do you dare to come in front of the seniors? Seeing a group of people staring at them with the same eyes as if they had killed their father, Yang Chun could only spread his hands to express his innocence. The business can't be done, but benevolence and righteousness, right? If the seniors don't want to pay, it doesn't matter. This younger generation junior doesn't contribute. Don't tell me you want to stay in this magic weapon, and not come out? Someone asked immediately. He was going to say the tortoise shell, but when he just spat out the word wu, he saw Sun Qingxue inside and suddenly changed his words. Yang Chun and the others had the black tortoise shield to protect their bodies. They couldn't hurt them for the time being, but also meant that Yang Chun and the others couldn't leave. The people here would not let Yang Chun and the others leave and spread the news. They would keep them at all costs. I'm sorry, as a magic refining master, I still have a certain net worth. Yang Chen put on an embarrassed face and said these words. As if in coordination with Yang Chen's words, the four women behind him have taken out tables and chairs from their chinquin bags, the red clay stove, and so on. Sure, Shan Shan had started to drive the stove to boil water and prepare the tea. They planned to make the tea slowly. Li Qing took out 2 small wine cups and a wine pot and asked Yang Chen to sit down. The two of them began to drink 1 cup after another. While drinking, Yang Chen didn't stop. He kept taking out large pieces of upper-grade spirit stones from his chinquin bag and put them on the table to show off. Not to mention anything else, just this pile of upper-grade spirit stones had already exceeded 1,000 jin. This was only a small part of the last time Yang Chen made a fortune at the gathering point. It must be known that a demon bead could be sold for a few hundred jin. After accumulating, Yang Chen could easily take out tens of thousands of upper-grade spirit stones. Even if there was no spiritual power in this damn place, just relying on the spirit stones, Yang Chen's family and Li Cheng could continue to cultivate. So many upper-grade spirit stones were enough to support a few people's cultivation for thousands of years. Not to mention that this was still a place with abundant spiritual power. It was just a little bit of demonic energy interference. For Yang Chen, it was simply not a problem. Yang Chen put on such a posture of planning to consume for a long time, and the people outside were dumbfounded for a while. Using his life to threaten him, he had the Xuanwu shield in his hand, so he didn't care at all. If he couldn't be trapped, he wouldn't delay his cultivation. If he was forced, he would lose a life. It was simply helpless. However, a group of demon sect masters couldn't wait any longer. They waited for hundreds of years to find a guy who didn't care about the demonic energy and could be purified. If it didn't catch him, who knew how long they would have to wait? Even if they didn't say what good things could be obtained in the ruins, the problem of lifespan alone was enough to make a group of people feel helpless. The masters of the Deshang stage had a lifespan of 5,000 years. Many people here had already lived for more than half of it. If they couldn't break through in the next few years, it meant that they could only wait for death. The devilish bead could increase their cultivation base, but as long as it was a devilish bead with demonic energy, there was a risk. The low-grade bead was meaningless to them at all, and the high-grade 3rd grade and above couldn't clean the demonic energy on it all. After taking it, there was a 60% chance that there would be big trouble, and the remaining 40% was the opportunity. The problem was that if there was a purified devilish bead, if there were some better magic weapon materials that could be obtained in the ruins, why would they risk their lives to improve? However, the only person who could purify the demonic chi and help them open the entrance to the ruins was not willing to help because they had not intended to pay him. Now that they had angered him, he would rather be trapped here than help them. What should they do? At the critical moment, Ingmei performed well. Seeing that everyone didn't talk, he also knew what these people were thinking in their hearts. So, Ingmei finally stood up. Grandmaster, we were only joking. Naturally, we will give you the reward that you mentioned. Ingmei was the first person to contact with Yang Chen, and it was also Ingmei who promised to give the reward. At this time, he stood up and acted as a peacemaker between the two sides. Yes, it's just a joke. It's just a transaction, of course. You have to pay the price. With Ingmei as a stepping stone, All the masters of the Deshang stage climbed down the pole and agreed again and again. However, Master, the things you want are too much. We still need to get together. Mei then opened his mouth, and his tone was more of a discussion. Master, please sit down first. Wait for us to get the things together. Well said. I do business, the price is fair, and I am honest. Yangchen reached out and made a gesture. You continue. With this premise, the atmosphere between the two sides eased for a while. Mei was about to discuss with everyone in the distance, but someone expressed a different opinion. We can get together the reward, but if we get together for a long time, the master can't purify the demonic energy there. What if we can't do it? A master who was far away asked, also, there are a lot of rewards. Some people pay more, some people pay less. How should it be calculated? Chapter 1052. Master, how do you think this matter should be solved? When Mei heard that it was reasonable, he immediately turned back and asked Yangchen. In fact, not only Mei, but everyone else felt that it was reasonable. Mei said this just to express the meaning of everyone. Can you purify the demonic qi? Is it possible to purify a first-class demonic bead? Yangchen thought for a moment and asked. In the beginning, someone wanted to use the demonic bead to test Yangchen. Later, it was ruined by a series of things. This time, it should be no problem, right? Purifying the demonic bead is not enough. The voice in the distance said again. Although Yangchen and Li Cheng were strong, after all, their cultivation bases were there, and they could not be crossed. After thinking about it, he was still not sure that he could kill all the masters of the Deshang stage here. Otherwise, they would definitely come to the place and start directly, and would never use such a troublesome way. Now that the guy who was hiding far away was so questioning, Yangchen had no good way to deal with it. He could only spread his hands and asked, what other good ideas do the seniors have? From here to the north, about 1,000 miles away from here, there is a valley. As long as you can go and purify the things in that valley, I will admit that you have the ability to purify the demonic qi. I will take out a 7th grade demonic fire as a reward. The master who spoke in the distance continued to transmit his voice, and everyone heard it clearly. The valley in the north? When Mei heard it, his face suddenly changed. Isn't it too dangerous? It seemed that everyone here knew what the valley in the north was. Yangchen could feel that at least half of the people had some changes in their faces after hearing about it. Dangerous? Would he not need to take risks? The other party still sneered in the distance and replied, moreover, if you can't even cope with the demonic qi there, the demonic qi on the other side of the portal is even worse. Isn't it harming Master Yang? This, Mei really couldn't refute it for a while. It seemed that this was indeed true. At least most of the people next to him were nodding. Okay, I will go there. Yangchen didn't know what was there, but after absorbing 2 kinds of 5th grade fire, his confidence was greatly increased. How could he be frightened by some small difficulties? Li Cheng insisted on coming here. There might be something good inside, so how could he miss it? Seeing that Yangchen agreed, the masters of the Deshang stage outside seemed to have a strange light in their eyes. They couldn't tell whether it was helplessness or shock or gloating. There was a helpless, bitter smile on Mei's face. When he looked at Li Cheng, there was even a trace of pleading in his eyes. This was what Yangchen had promised himself. It had nothing to do with Mei. He didn't want Yangchen to be angry at him because of this incident. He didn't know what method Li Cheng used, but he actually scared the Deshang stage master like this. Yangchen was about to step out of the black tortoise shield when he suddenly stopped and asked in a loud voice, however, if I go out for a while, how can the various seniors guarantee that they will not take the opportunity to deal with me? Since you're willing to help, how can we destroy our hundreds of years of hope? The master in the distance seemed to have some status. At least the demonic path masters here nodded in succession and echoed his words. In that case, I will not go too far. Senior, you and Senior Mei, and there are 10 seniors with the highest cultivation base who will make a hard oath. They will never harm me before I purify the demonic qi of the portal. I will believe you. Yangchen put forward a seemingly impossible request. I'm a villain first, and then a gentleman. In any case, I have to save my life. The masters looked at me, I looked at you, and then turned their eyes to Yang Chen's group, and no one spoke. What's so difficult about this? The voice in the distance sneered and said loudly, if you are useless, you will die when you get to that valley. Do you still need us to do it? If you are useful, we will naturally not do it before you purify the portal. This old man swears by my heart that I will never do it before you purify the portal. With this master taking the lead, Ingmei no longer felt any pressure and immediately followed up with a second heart demon oath. Perhaps the words of the master were very reasonable, and immediately 10 masters swore one after another. Although it was unknown if they were the 10 with the highest cultivation base, the number was not at all inferior. After hearing everyone finish swearing by their heart demons, Yang Chen then stepped out of the black tortoise shield's protective circle. With these 12 masters swearing by their heart demons, he temporarily did not have to worry about being attacked by a group of people. If someone made a move, it meant that they wanted to kill these 12 masters. After they swore, they would definitely not let these people do it. Or it could be said that the words of the master were effective. After Yang Chen came out, no one showed any signs of making a move. Instead, it was the few closest to him who gave him detailed directions. Everyone's eyes were filled with a kind of gloating and expectant gaze. It was as if they hoped that something would happen to him, but it also seemed like they did not want anything to happen to him. It was a little contradictory. No one asked how the rewards would be distributed after everyone pulled together. If Yang Chen couldn't even pass this hurdle, naturally, there was no need for them to pool their rewards. Therefore, everything had to wait for the result after Yang Chen went to the valley. After Yang Chen asked about the detailed route, he said goodbye to Li Cheng and the 4 women, summoned the 9 secluded flying sword, and flew toward the valley regardless. A group of masters watched Yang Chen take out a flying sword that was surrounded by demonic qi and flew with it. They didn't know what expression was contained in their eyes as they watched Yang Chen leave. He didn't know what was in the valley. How could it make a master of the Deshang stage like Ingmei have such a reaction? Yang Chen was also puzzled along the way. However, what made Yang Chen even more puzzled was that when he flew for almost 300 or 400 miles, he found that there was no demonic beast in the direction of the valley ahead. When he first came out, there were still a lot of demonic beasts, but under the attack of the 9 secluded flying sword, even the Deshang stage monster was not the opponent of Yang Chen. This place was rich in demonic qi, but a large group of demon sect Deshang stage masters were stationed here. From time to time, people would come out to cultivate, and the demonic beasts were quite few. In a one-on-one situation, there was no demonic beast that was the opponent of Yang Chen. Occasionally, a few would come out and become nourishment for the 9 secluded flying sword, supplementing the demonic qi of the 9 secluded flying sword. But after a few hundred miles, there was not a single demonic beast, which made Yang Chen a little surprised. What was the situation? Especially when Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was released, but he couldn't detect dozens of miles away, which made Yang Chen even more surprised. Chapter 1053. Such a situation, Yang Chen had encountered it before when he encountered the demonized vine. Now that the demonized vine had become the spirit of the 9 nether flying sword, fully absorbing the demon qi, there were some fibers in the demonized vine that could block the exploration of the spiritual awareness, which was exactly the same as the current situation. The only difference was that the concentration of the demon qi here was 10 times more than at that time. Could it be that there was also a similar demonized vine here? At the thought of this, Yang Chen couldn't help but be a little excited. If this was the case, then wouldn't God want him to make a fortune? The last time he got it was a demonic bead the size of a human head, plus a dozen pounds of fibers that blocked the exploration of the spiritual awareness. What was it this time? Especially now that the yin-yang heaven-burning fire had absorbed 2 kinds of hellfire. Its power had almost doubled. It would be easier to deal with these demon vines. The 9 nether flying swords sped up and quickly rushed in the direction of the valley. After rushing forward for a few dozen miles, Yang Chen had already determined that he had encountered the same demonized vine again. No wonder those guys wanted Yang Chen to come and purify the valley. It seemed that the entire valley was the body of the demonized vine. It was just that he didn't know where those masters found the location of the valley. It must be known that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness could only explore the edge of a few dozen miles at most. Unless those people had been to the valley, it was impossible to know where the body of the demonized vine was. Of course, Yang Chen was not arrogant enough to think that he alone could compete with the demonized vine. Others may not have the means to subdue the demonized vine, but escaping from the attack of the demonized vine, presumably there should be many masters who could do it, right? It was not surprising that they could find the body of the demonized vine. As soon as he rushed into the sphere of influence of the demonized vine, the thick black vines rolled over overwhelmingly, directly wrapping Yang Chen in it. This time, Yang Chen did not directly use the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, but used the 9 nether flying sword to contend. After all, the 9 serenity's flying sword needed to absorb a large amount of devil chi to become more and more powerful. Now that there was a demonized vine with a devil chi that was almost 10 times richer than the demonized vines, wouldn't it be a waste of an opportunity if he didn't absorb it to his heart's content? After releasing the 9 nether flying sword, a thick black fog appeared around Yang Chen. This was the original form of the 9 nether flying dust. As soon as the vines rushed into the black mist, they seemed to lose track of Yang Chen. However, the 9 abyss flying sword emitted a strong suction force, competing with the demonized vine for the demonic chi, and immediately provoked the demonized vine to counterattack. Demonic chi was the root of the demonized vine's strength. How could it be absorbed by the flying sword? Moreover, the large ball, surrounded by many vines, even if the target was lost, it must be in this large ball. Countless vines were just madly tightening, and they would always come into contact with Yang Chen. Obviously, the cultivation of this demonized vine was deeper than the one on the periphery of the demon continent. Its ability to absorb devil chi was almost equal to that of the 9 nether flying sword. It must be known that this was a branch hundreds of miles away from the demonized vine's main body, and the opponent was wrapped in Yang Chen's magic weapon 9 nether flying sword. The suction force of the two sides was equal. One could imagine the strength of this demonized vine. The vines had already pressed towards the center, and Yang Chen also released the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, but it only formed a lotus flower and a peach blossom within a foot of his body, wrapping Yang Chen, but never expanding outward. As soon as the vines of the demonized vine came into contact with the refining flame and the peach blossom, it seemed to have encountered some natural enemies. It retreated frantically, and in the end, it only formed a vine cocoon the size of a few feet, firmly wrapping Yang Chen and the 9 nether flying sword in it. However, after all, the demonized vine was invaded by the devil chi and had no consciousness. It only acted according to its instincts. Under the control of the 9 nether flying sword by Yang Chen, it was defeated. The devil chi of the branch vines was absorbed by the 9 nether flying sword little by little, and the vines gradually began to retract, but they still took the huge cocoon and moved a little bit towards the main body. If Yang Chen was willing, as long as the yin-yang heaven-burning fire was released, he would soon be able to reach the main root of the demonized vine, but he didn't want to do that. It would be a pity to burn such a more profound demonized vine. The sword spirit of the 9 nether flying sword was not strong enough and needed to be supplemented. If he wanted to uproot it, he had to wait for the idea of this demonized vine to be absorbed into the 9 nether flying sword and be swallowed by the spirit. In this way, it would take a long time. In a month, it was just competing with the branch vines for the devil chi and advancing more than 100 miles towards the main body, and it was still being taken forward by the branch vines. There was no news of Yang Chen's departure for a month, and the demonic pathmasters waiting in the valley were a little impatient. Although they knew the danger of that place, they still looked forward to Yang Chen's ability to create a miracle. On the contrary, Li Cheng and the 4 women did not feel worried about Yang Chen's trip. They lived and cultivated in the Xuanwu Shield, completely unaffected. This made many demonic path cultivators feel a little strange. Are they so confident in Yang Chen? They didn't know Yang Chen's progress, so they could only send someone to check. Ying Mei became the person who inquired about the news. In such a short distance, Ingmei did not need to go deep into the main body, so she quickly brought back the news. Yang Qin's figure was not known, but the vines in that area had almost been swept away. Ingmei advanced more than 100 miles in the direction of the valley before she found those vines again. It seemed that this area had been cleared and purified by Yang Qin and was still in progress. This news made those demonic path cultivators look forward to it even more. Almost everyone knew the power of the vines. Yang Qin, a little guy in the early nascent soul stage, could actually resist the vines and purify 100 miles. This was simply unprecedented. It seemed that his ability to purify the devil chi was not bragging, but really so powerful. Perhaps Yang Qin could really clean up those demonized vines and then come back to purify the portal of the ruins. In this case, it was necessary for everyone to make some preparations in advance. For a time, a group of masters began to privately think about how to seize this opportunity and get more benefits from the ruins. Some of the guys who were originally lone wolves gradually began to form groups according to the distance between them. Everyone was eager to fight, waiting for Yang Qin to return and purify the portal. If you have such leisure time, it is better to think about the rewards that Master Yang wants and how everyone can come up with it. Ingmei went out again after a month and found that Yang Qin had advanced another 100 miles. After returning, she directly began to reprimand those who were forming gangs. Chapter 10:54. Yang Qin didn't know how these people would deal with the reward. He was now immersed in competing with a more powerful demonized vine for the control of the demonic chi. After 2 months of absorbing the demonic chi, the 9 secluded flying sword, although the total amount of the demonic chi did not increase much, but the absorption ability of the demonic chi had definitely reached a big level. The pure spirit of the 9 secluded flying sword, in fact, strictly speaking, the demonic vine phantom, which was not a spirit, seemed to have solidified a bit. It was not so easy to be able to fight at this distance with the demonized vine, which was more than 10 times stronger than the phantom itself. In just 2 months, the demonic vine phantom had at least doubled its strength, and also made the 9 secluded flying sword more powerful. In the following days, it was basically maintaining the speed of about 100 miles per month, approaching the valley where the demonized vine body was located. In the later stages, the speed dropped sharply, even if it took a lot of time to move forward. It could almost be said that Yang Qin was moving forward step by step under the raindrop-like attack. The closer he got to the main root body, the stronger the attack of those vines. Even they had begun to attack without fear of death. The vines were no longer afraid of the power of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Even if they risked being burned, they would attack Yang Qin madly. The diameter of the huge vine had far exceeded Yang Qin. Like a giant pillar that shook the sky, it whipped towards Yang Qin. The power of each blow was comparable to the attack power of the late Deshang stage. Yang Qin sacrificed the golden bell and operated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique to the limit, which could block the terrifying attack. But even so, although Yang Qin was not injured, his body would be directly smashed into the ground by this huge vine attack almost every time. Of course, the demonized vine did not take advantage of it. Every attack meant that he would lose at least 1 vine with a thickness of 10 feet. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire was already difficult to deal with. Now that it had absorbed 2 kinds of hellfire, it was the natural nemesis of the demonic creatures. If it was slightly contaminated with a little flame, it would have to completely abandon this part of its body. Otherwise, its body would be implicated. Yang Qin had obtained a lot of mysterious fibers from these incinerated bodies. Yang Qin's position was also getting closer to the valley where the main route was. When they were about 100 miles away from the valley, the demonified Rattan's attacks almost reached their limit. Although the demonized vine had no consciousness, it still instinctively understood that once Yang Qin reached the main root body, it would mean a dead end. At this point, the demonified vine demon wanted to use all means possible to kill Yang Qin. All the vines that had spread for hundreds of miles were retracted, abandoning the smaller branches and condensing into thicker vines, attacking Yang Chun continuously. At this time, the simple attack of the demonified vine demon was already comparable to the masters of the peak de Shang stage. Every blow carried the power of earth-shaking. Mixed with a massive amount of demonic qi, it was unstoppable. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to withstand such attacks for a long time. Even Sun Qingxue with the Xuanwu shield was the same. Even if the Xuanwu shield could block this level of attack, it could not stop the invasion of this level of demonic qi. As long as it withstood a few hundred attacks, the Xuanwu shield would inevitably be eroded by the demonic qi and lose its effect. But Yang Chun was different. He refined a 9-nether flying sword. The 9-nether flying sword was wrapped outside the golden bell, blocking all the demonic qi attacks and strengthening itself. The stronger the demonic qi, the more the 9-nether flying sword could absorb. Without the influence of the demonic qi, the Dragon Clan Golden Bell, plus the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, could fully support the pure spiritual power and physical attacks. Yang Chun was like this, withstanding the endless attacks and moving forward step by step. Every time he was smashed into the ground by the demonified vine, then Yang Chun pulled out of the ground, moved forward, and was smashed into the ground again. Along the way, the place where Yang Chun passed has been smashed into a huge valley that was hundreds of feet deep and tens of miles long. Yang Chun himself was like a forging piece placed on an anvil, constantly being forged by a huge force, and the spiritual power of the whole body would be exhausted at most. At this time, whether it was the high-grade spirit stone or the top-grade spirit stone, it could not allow Yang Chun to quickly restore his spiritual power. Only the massive amount of spiritual solution could do this. Every attack was equivalent to a tempering of the 9-nether flying sword, the Dragon Clan Golden Bell, and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Every time it suffered an attack, the 9-nether flying sword would absorb a lot of demonic qi, and the demonified vine phantom was becoming more and more solid. After advancing less than 20 miles, the demonified vine phantom had fully restored the strength of its original body. From the completion of the refining to the present, the 9-nether flying sword has not absorbed enough demonic qi. It was not known how many years it took for the demonified vine to grow into such a powerful existence. If it wasn't for this demonified vine's constant replenishment of demonic qi, it wouldn't be known how many years it would take to recover to this point. Those demonic cultivators let Yang Chun come here to verify his means, which indirectly helped Yang Chen's 9-nether flying sword. If they knew the result, they didn't know if they would still insist on letting Yang Chen come here. Yang Chen's harvest was far more than that. Because the 7th metal true essence solution was the most, Yang Chen used the 7th metal true essence solution to restore his own spiritual power. Every time he withstood this extreme attack, Yang Chun had to inject a large number of 7th metal true essence transformed from the 7th metal true essence liquid into the Dragon Clan Golden Bell, in order to maintain the power of the Golden Bell and not worry about energy exhaustion and damage. No matter what kind of magic weapon it was, it needed a steady stream of spiritual power. Otherwise, when the spiritual power was exhausted, no matter how strong the magic weapon was, it could only be the strength of the remaining materials. In the mortal world, even if it was a strong material, it could not withstand a few heavy blows from a master of the peak de Shang stage who was close to the tribulation stage. Even if it could withstand 1 or 2 attacks, it would absolutely not be able to withstand more attacks. Even if it was as strong as the Dragon Golden Bell, when it received such an attack, it would almost exhaust all the spiritual power in the Golden Bell. Then it was quickly replenished, and it would withstand another blow. The cycle continued as if there was no end. This method of exhausting the spiritual power every time and then quickly replenishing it made almost every corner of the Dragon Golden Bell permeate with the 7th metal true essence solution. In addition, Yang Chun had to routinely use the universe treasure raising secret art and the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art every day, plus the maintenance of the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art. The Golden Bell was finally unsealed again after being attacked for tens of thousands of times. The third golden dragon was lit up and the third dragon shadow appeared on the surface of the golden bell. The protection of the golden bell directly rose to a higher level, and it was relatively easy to take the attack of the demonified vine. Chapter 1055. The third layer of the seal of the golden bell was unlocked, and in the mind of Yang Chun, there was immediately a mantra, but it was the third layer control method of the golden bell. The three dragon shadows were enough to block the attack of the peak de Shang stage. At this moment, it was relatively easy to deal with it, as long as Yang Chun could continue to provide spiritual power. The third layer of unlocking did not have many other functions, but the golden bell could be turned into a set of armor, which looked more pleasing to the eye. Not only has the golden bell changed, but even the body refining technique of Yang Chen's own cultivation has been refined again under this kind of tempering. The demonized vine's nonstop attack was originally for its own safety. It knew that Yang Chen's life would be in danger if he was close to the main body, so it had to do so. But this level of attack for Yang Chun was no less than the best training. Every time he withstood an attack, Yang Chun needed to upgrade the body refining technique to the extreme. Although the demonized vine was a huge vine bombardment, but at this level the pressure Yang Chun withstood was no longer from one direction, but from all directions and angles. There was almost no dead angle in the whole body. Under the pervasive pressure, the body refining technique of the yellow turban strongman was like the golden bell of the Dragon Clan. After being stimulated, it was finally upgraded. After withstanding a certain attack, when Yang Chun urged the body refining technique again, he suddenly found some changes. The body refining technique that was trapped in the interruption of the river turning force finally broke through the bottleneck and entered the high level of the river turning force in one fell swoop. The surging power in his whole body made Yang Chun have an urge to vent immediately. The effect of the body refining finally reached the bones from the skin and muscles, and the whole person seemed to be reborn. The breakthrough of the magic weapon, coupled with the breakthrough of the body refining technique, made the speed of Yang Chen's advancement a bit faster, and he was still unswervingly advancing towards the valley. In the waiting valley, Ingmei would go to check on Yang Chen's progress every few days. However, in the past few months, it was clear that Yang Chen's speed had slowed down a lot. Originally, he could advance 100 miles in a month, but now he could only advance 10 miles in a month. The vines within 100 miles of the demonized vine's main body had almost completely disappeared. Needless to say, it must have been the work of Yang Chen's purification. Ingmei couldn't even get within 20 miles of Yang Chen before she was forced back by the terrifying burst of demonic energy. His divine sense was also blocked by something, so he was unable to find out what was going on inside. However, one thing was certain, that was, the demonized vine must be wantonly attacking. Even if it was 20 miles away, Ingmei could fully perceive the terrifying attack aura of the peak de Shang stage. The intensity of such an attack, Ingmei simply could not imagine. Only now did he really understand the horror of Yang Chun. To be able to receive such a dense level of attack, how terrifying was Yang Chen's own strength. After realizing this, Ingmei was extremely glad that when he first found Yang Chun, he did not do anything excessive to Yang Chun for the sake of caution. Otherwise, the consequences would simply be unimaginable, and now he felt scared. What did the guys gathered in the valley know? They were naive enough to think that Yang Chun and Li Cheng were only in the early Yuanying stage. They could only rely on the magic weapon and the Xuanwu shield passed down by their ancestors to protect themselves, but they didn't know that if they really wanted to make a move, they would die miserably. Ingmei would not take the initiative to tell those demonic cultivators about the horrors of Yang Chun and Li Cheng. Such a rare commodity, naturally, should be grasped in his own hands. He could not let others rob him of his own flattery. As long as he held the thick thighs of the two people, would he be afraid of not getting any benefits when entering the ruins? Every time he came back to report the news to everyone, Ingmei simply announced how far Yang Chun had gone. Even if Yang Chun slowed down in this period, it was still within everyone's expectations. The closer he was to the main body, the stronger the demonized vine was. This was natural. If Yang Chun could still maintain the original speed of advancement, it would definitely make many people uneasy. The more Yang Chun moved forward, the more obvious the expectation in the eyes of the demonic cultivators became. After waiting for hundreds of years, this time it seemed that they really waited for the opportunity. The good things in the ruins, seeing that they would belong to them in the near future, everyone was very happy. The ruins were jointly discovered by several masters. No one knew what was inside, but just looking at the restriction of the portal made people crazy. If a bunch of worthless things were hidden in the door in this way, it would be a joke. It was absolutely that all the essence of a sect was left inside, so it would be so cautious. Later, an incomplete jade slip was found nearby, which proved their guess. That jade slip might have been left by the people of the sect in a hurry. It roughly recorded some ways to enter the portal and some rules. Basically, it was determined that it was left for the younger generation of the sect. No one knew how it was lost in that place. According to the records on the jade slip, this sect was founded by an expert known as the Lord of Mental Demons. For some unknown reason, the sect suffered a disaster and a large number of high-level disciples died. As a last resort, the severely injured sect leader sealed the sect, allowing some of the younger disciples to escape in order to continue the bloodline of the sect. In the ruins, a large number of the sect's resources were preserved. There were all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Tens of thousands of years ago, the abundance of resources in the mortal world was far from what could be imagined now. In addition, there were many powerful magic treasures, which were sealed one by one and left for the younger generation. Any one of these magic treasures was the best in the mortal world. Moreover, all the magic treasures seemed to have the function of resisting the inner demons and strengthening the Taoist heart. For demonic cultivators, it was simply perfect. More importantly, there were dozens of cultivation methods in this sect, all of which could resolve the inner demons. There were several powerful ones that could even use the inner demons as cultivation tools. These cultivation methods alone were worth fighting for by these demonic cultivators, not to mention those rich resources and powerful magic treasures. It could be said that any one of them was enough to make the demonic cultivator who entered free and unfettered. This was much more worthwhile than killing on the demon continent and then taking the risk to take the demon bead. It was a pity that when the portal was discovered, the first few guys who discovered it did not do it secretly enough, leading to many masters knowing this place, so there were so many demonic cultivators gathered in the Deshang stage. Everyone was waiting for the opportunity to open the portal. Yang Chen's performance let everyone see hope, and everyone began to look forward to what kind of good luck they would have after opening the portal. As for the reward that Yang Chen wanted, to be honest, it was just a worldly possession, so why not give it to him for the time being? What's more, those people swore that they would not make a move on Yang Chen before opening the portal. What about after opening the portal? Chapter 10:56. Because the Dragon Clan Golden Bell and the Yellow Turban Strongman Body Refining Technique were all upgraded, it was much easier to resist the attack of the demonized vine, and his speed also improved a lot. Soon, Yang Chen was within 10 miles of the valley. The valley where the main route of the demonized vine was located, Yang Chen could already explore a part of it with his spiritual awareness. This valley was dozens of times larger than the valley where the Tool Spirit Demon Vine was located. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness only explored almost a few dozen miles, but he did not touch the edge. Outside the scope of the spiritual awareness, he did not know how much. This demonized vine seemed to be much stronger than the Tool Spirit Demon Vine. Not to mention anything else, the difference could be seen from the vines. The thickest part of the original Tool Spirit Demon Vine that he encountered was only a few feet thick, and now this one, especially at this position, the thinnest vine that Yang Chen saw was also 10 feet. It was a bit too much to describe it as a vine, but it was a bit more vivid to describe it as a towering pillar, although Yang Chen clearly knew that it was indeed just the vines of the demonized vine. Compared to Yang Chen's body, these vines were too huge, so that the traditional strangulation tactics of the demonized vine were useless, leaving only a very powerful ramming tactic. At this point, Yang Chun began to upgrade the 9 nether flying sword in a safe and secure situation. The demonic chi absorbed along the way was enough to upgrade the 9 nether flying sword by 2 grades in succession. If the 4 women now want to use the 9 nether flying sword to continue the heart demon tempering, without the protection of Yang Chun, they will definitely be hurt by the heart demon. It was estimated that the main root of the demonized vine was also aware of the danger. Since it occupied this valley, no other living creature has been able to approach this point. On the verge of life and death, the demonized vine also began to break out. Yang Chun was stunned to find that the vines of the demonized vine actively retracted into the valley. When he rushed up and was about to reach the edge of the valley, he was once again attacked. Who knew how many vines were woven together, turning into many short and thick giant sticks that smashed down with a loud rumble. They attacked from several directions. Just the vines alone occupied the surrounding space. Yang Chun had no way to escape and could only receive the attacks head-on. Under the ground, there were already countless vines at the bottom, which were harder than steel. The giant sticks smashed down from above, carrying a huge amount of demon chi and spiritual power, like a hammer and an anvil, began to forge Yang Chun's body like a piece of iron. Boom, boom, boom. After a few consecutive smashes, even Yang Chun's golden bell and body refining technique felt strenuous. If it weren't for the support of the nearly infinite spiritual liquid, maybe the golden bell would have been smashed into gold pancakes. What made Yang Chun most unbelievable was that this series of attacks actually exceeded the level of the peak de Shang stage. This was incredible. The power beyond the peak de Shang stage was only possible for the masters who had crossed the tribulation and ascended. The problem was that if the tribulation was successful, they would soon ascend. How could they stay in this valley for so long? Even if they had the means of the Great Elder, they had to keep a low profile and hide their strength. Once it broke out, it would soon trigger the tribulation. And this demonized vine did not show any signs of triggering the tribulation. There could only be one reason to explain it. That was this demonized vine had no consciousness at all, and there was no state of mind cultivation at all. So there would be this kind of crazy growth in strength, but it would not trigger the tribulation. According to this development, if this demonized vine was unrestrained, he believed that its strength would increase without limit. Fortunately, Yang Chun found it now. Otherwise, he didn't know what kind of disaster it would bring to the world. Not to mention anything else, it could be seen that there were no other living things within its range of existence. At this point, Yang Chun could no longer hold back. He could no longer temper the 9 secluded flying sword. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire was fully urged and rolled up these terrifying vines. It had to be said that the red lotus hellfire and peach blossom hellfire came too timely. The natural restraint attribute made the yin-yang heaven-burning fire greatly increase its power. As soon as it touched those vines, it began to spread wildly. If he had not absorbed the 5th grade fire seed, in the face of the strength of the demonized vine beyond the Deshang stage, Yang Chun doubted that his own yin-yang heaven-burning fire could do anything to this demonized vine. The demonized vine only acted by instinct. With such a blazing flame, it naturally retreated madly and no longer attacked Yang Chun. After waiting for a while, it found that it could not get rid of this terrifying flame. Immediately, like the situation in the past, it quickly cut off its arm and completely abandoned the burning branch. The abandoned branch was not wasted by Yang Chun at all. This was a branch that was comparable to a human immortal master. The 9 secluded flying sword directly wrapped it and quickly absorbed the demonic chi that was no longer controlled by the main root. The demonized vine suffered a loss in that it could not move. After being trapped by the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, it had the strength of a human immortal, but it could not extinguish the flame. It could only give up the vines in vain, leaving only a huge main root body. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire turned into a huge red lotus and peach blossom, completely wrapping the demonized vine's main root, but it did not burn it further. It just made the main root in a radius of 100 miles not dare to move. Subsequently, the nine secluded flying sword turned into a long, thin needle and directly penetrated into the main root body from a point. Originally, it was intended to let the nine secluded flying sword completely absorb the demonic chi in the demonized vine. However, as soon as the flying sword plunged in, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness controlled the nine secluded flying sword and immediately felt an unusually strong attraction. The phantom of the demonized vine in the flying sword was almost pulled out of the nine secluded flying sword. In the end, the current demonized vine and this demonized vine could not compete with each other, especially in the other's main body. The strength difference was too big. As a last resort, Yang Chun could only pour the yin-yang heaven-burning fire along the nine secluded flying sword. At the same time, the red lotus and peach blossom on the outside also began to shrink inward. The huge main root body was ignited. This time, no matter how strong the wrist was, it could not abandon the most core part and could only let the yin-yang heaven-burning fire rage. It had the strength of a human immortal, but because it had no consciousness, it could only step into death little by little. With the yin-yang heaven-burning fire burning step by step, Yang Chun harvested those mysterious fibers. At the same time, the nine secluded flying sword was also frantically extracting the demonic chi from the part of the body of the dead demonized vine, constantly strengthening itself. When all the flames were finally concentrated in the core part of almost 2 feet, the nine secluded flying sword suddenly sucked, and then Yang Chun noticed that something seemed to have entered the nine secluded flying sword. Chapter 10:57. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was really too powerful. The 4th grade human immortal. In a mortal world, it was a heaven-defying existence. When he refined a nine secluded flying sword with his own hands, he was immediately keenly aware of it. However, at this time, Yang Chun did not have time to explore the nine secluded flying sword for the time being. The remaining 2 feet square ball was clearly a huge devilish bead, even bigger than the last head-sized devilish bead. What grade was this? Super? Yang Chun didn't know. Anyway, this weight was definitely enough to kill the devilish bead taken out by the masters of the Deshang stage. Even if there was a guy who took out a 1st-grade devilish bead not long ago, in front of this huge bead, it was just a slag. The devilish bead was full of strong devilish chi. Yang Chen's first reaction was to use the nine secluded flying sword to absorb the devilish chi. But considering the abnormality of the nine secluded flying sword just now, Yang Chun first put the devilish bead in a separate chinquin bag and then directly projected the nine secluded flying sword into his own sea of consciousness. The nine secluded flying sword, which was enlarged countless times, showed its original form in the sea of consciousness, which was a dark cloud of nine secluded flying dust without a fixed shape. From the outside, the nine secluded flying sword was no different, but when Yang Chun used his spiritual awareness to explore the incomplete spirit, a sudden change occurred. A sudden shadow became bigger in an instant, occupying a small half of Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. It had a black body, surrounded by countless branches and vines. It was the demonized vine whose body had been completely destroyed. This demonized vine was clearly smarter than the demonic vine artifact spirit. Even though it didn't have a mind of its own, with its cultivation reaching this level, it would more or less produce a trace of spiritual sense. In the face of imminent death, driven by instinct, that trace of spiritual sense directly drilled into the nine nether flying sword, which was also filled with devil chi. Thereupon, the tool spirit demonic vine's phantom and the foreign demonic vine's consciousness began a great battle. Both sides began to fight for the dominance of the nine nether flying sword. Just at the beginning, the nine nether flying sword was sent into Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. Therefore, the demonic vine's spiritual consciousness immediately occupied Yang Chen's sea of consciousness and began to further erode it. Any random cultivator, if their spiritual sense cultivation was insufficient, would definitely have their spiritual sense taken over by the demonic vine, and their spiritual sense would be destroyed. But who was Yang Chun? He was a super heaven-defying monster with the divine sense cultivation of the fourth stage of the human immortal realm at the Yuanying stage. How could he be defeated by the demonic vine's divine sense? The powerful spiritual awareness began to attack directly. Plus, there was the shadow of the yin-yang heaven burning fire in the sea of consciousness. Under the attack of several sides, the demon Rot-Tan's spiritual awareness was only a little bit of spiritual awareness, and it was completely obliterated. The remaining phantom, which was many times larger than the tool spirit demonic vine's phantom, was left in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. The demonic vine's spiritual awareness contained a huge amount of devil qi, but this devil qi had almost no effect on Yang Chen, who was at the fourth stage of the human immortal realm. At best, it could only cause Yang Chen's mood to explode. After 2 years of tempering with the 9 nether flying sword, Yang Chen was almost accustomed to this change, and it was a daunting experience. Such a good thing was simply a tonic for the 9 nether flying sword. Yang Chen did not neglect it and directly controlled the phantom and sent it into the 9 nether flying sword. Under the joint effect of Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness plus the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, the phantom quickly began to be swallowed by the tool spirit demonic vine's phantom and then assimilated. The massive amount of devil qi that was originally carried by the phantom also directly benefited the 9 nether flying sword. With the two combined, the 9 nether flying sword directly improved by grade. The 9 nether flying sword became darker and deeper, and the devil qi was richer than before, but it was a little more restrained. Looking at the changes of the 9 nether flying sword, Yang Chen's mind suddenly moved, and he quickly took out a mysterious fiber from the Chinquan bag, which could block the exploration of the spiritual awareness, and then threw it into the 9 nether flying sword, and began further refining. The 9 nether flying sword was refined from the 9 nether flying dust. The 9 nether flying dust spread out and could directly block the vision, especially after absorbing the spiritual awareness of the 2 demonic vines. The 9 nether flying sword became even more powerful. The 5 senses of hearing, smell, and touch were basically completely blocked. Coupled with these fibers that blocked the exploration of the spiritual awareness, it was like adding wings to a tiger, and even the spiritual awareness could not work. In the future, if any opponent was shrouded by the 9 nether flying sword, their 6 senses would be completely blocked, and they would be blind. Being slashed would almost have the same effect, and it could even last for a period of time. Basically, as long as one held the 9 nether flying sword in their hands, they were almost in an invincible position. Of course, not everyone could pick up the 9 nether flying sword, except for Yang Chen, who was completely familiar with the characteristics of the 9 nether flying sword from the beginning of the refining. Anyone else who wanted to touch the 9 nether flying sword would immediately be attacked by the 9 nether flying sword. With the heart, demon tribulation, and the 6 senses sealed, there were definitely only a handful of people who could still stand. It took Yang Chen half a year to refine the 9 nether flying sword. When Yang Chen's figure reappeared in the original valley, it was already a year and a half after he set off. During this year and a half, these Devil Path experts have been waiting. Ying Mei had been here several times. Every time it was in the center of the valley, the demonic energy was raging and they couldn't get close. Being able to reach the inside of the valley had fully explained the ability of Yang Chen. And looking at the performance of Li Cheng and the 4 women, it seemed that they were not worried about Yang Chen. In fact, a group of masters had already made a decision in their hearts. Many people began to slowly discuss the problem of how to get together the remuneration that Yang Chen wanted and how to ensure that these bleeding masters could get more benefits after everyone shared it. It was not difficult for a group of Deshang stage masters to come up with those things, but the difficult part was the distribution later. For this problem, from the beginning of a small quarrel to the later big quarrel, a group of masters almost fought. From ancient times to the present, this kind of uneven distribution of spoils had never been fair and just. After arguing for almost 2 months, there were finally more than a dozen old guys with the highest cultivation base who came forward and forcibly suppressed all kinds of voices of injustice and formulated a seemingly reasonable plan. Everyone took out things to be valued with spirit stones. The more precious the thing, the earlier they would enter the ruins after opening the portal. Every time the value of the things taken out exceeded the value of others by 10 pounds of high-grade spirit stones, they would enter the ruins 1 hour earlier than others. There was no fear of more things. Anyway, Yang Chun said that if he needed it, he would buy it with spirit stones. This was not a problem at all for Yang Chun, who was rich. Several old guys specially arranged a formation, and everyone was given an identification jade card. Only by holding the jade card could they pass through the formation and enter the portal of the ruins, and the jade card limited the time to pass through the formation. After roughly deciding the order of priority, everyone began to wait for Yang Chun to come back and open the portal. Chapter 1058. After Yang Chun returned, he was faced with many pairs of expectant and greedy eyes. Some are even impatient. I have proven that I have the ability to purify demonic aura. Before Ing Mei could speak, Yang Chun had already said loudly, "It's time to take out the promised reward, right? You are indeed a master. Your skills are extraordinary." Before Ing Mei could speak, the voice that questioned Yang Chun from the depths of the valley had already appeared. "The things have been prepared for you. Come over and count them." Li Cheng and the 4 women had been cultivating in the black tortoise shield these days. They only removed the shield after Yang Chun returned. The other party called Yang Chun inside to count the rewards. The 4 women and Yang Chun also followed. Safety was not a concern for the time being. Seeing that the portal was about to open, these people would not want to cause trouble at this time. Moreover, more than 10 experts had already made a heart demon oath. If anyone dared to do anything, it would definitely be against those people. The fire seed elixir recipe that Yang Chun had requested was said to have been prepared. However, it was not with a specific person. Instead, the owner registered it and then came over to hand it over to Yang Chun on the spot. It cannot be helped. These people actually did not trust each other. No one would really believe that if they handed over their things to someone, that person would not be greedy and take everything away. Moreover, some elixir recipes were considered secret techniques. Handing them over to someone for safekeeping was equivalent to obtaining the elixir recipe without paying any price, right? It had to be said that the more experts were, the richer they were. Yang Chun only asked for the 6th grade demonic fire, but a few experts actually took out 4 kinds of 7th grade demonic fires in order to get the opportunity to enter the portal of the ruins first. This made Yang Chun very surprised. These 7th grade demonic fires were not included in the previously proposed reward. They could be converted into low-grade demonic fires or exchanged with Yang Chun using the devilish bead. However, if they used the devilish bead to exchange, it was obviously not a price but an equivalent transaction. It would not be included in the price of entering the portal first. Therefore, these people all chose to convert it into low-grade demonic fires. Although the demon fire was precious, if it couldn't be used, it could only be passed down as a family heirloom. Who knew how many generations of descendants it would take before someone could use it? Now, that he was using it to exchange for the mental demon sex cultivation techniques and dharma treasures that he could use immediately, it was relatively worth it. In this way, Yang Chen's gains far exceeded his expectations. There were hundreds of types of devil flames, ranging from the 1st grade to the 7th grade. Yang Chun had only asked for 20 types of elixir recipes, but now he had received more than 50, which was more than double. As for the extra items, Yang Chun had said that he was willing to exchange them with demonic beads or spirit stones. Not everyone in the demon sect was so generous. Some people pretended to be smart and chose to exchange for spirit stones or demonic beads. The entrance of the ruins was protected by thick devil chi, and it was full of danger. Who knew if there were more dangerous things inside? Although the first to go and had the greatest chance, the risk of facing unknown dangers was also the greatest. Basically, the first to grab the opportunity were the dozen or so old devils with the highest cultivation base. Most people were still ranked in the middle. Since such a method was adopted, of course, there was an order. Those who took out the least valuable things or could not pay at all were ranked at the end. Anyway, these things have been discussed, and resolved by them internally. It had nothing to do with Yang Chun. Yang Chun only needed to receive the rewards or exchange these fire seeds with spirit stones and demonic beads. Yang Chun did not have extravagant expectations for the materials and the elixir recipes. The best quality materials were different from the elixir recipes. The elixir recipes only needed to be copied, and the fire seeds could also be strengthened and split through a unique cultivation method. For these guys, the loss was not big, but the best quality materials were one less, and no one was willing to hand them over. However, now Yang Chun was very satisfied. It was worth the hard work of this trip to receive unexpected fire seeds and elixir recipes. This time, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire would be more perfect. After handing over these rewards, Yang Chun finally came to a formation that had been arranged under the leadership of Ing Mei. This was the key for everyone to enter one after another. Inside the formation was the portal of the ruins. There were more than a dozen old devils who were qualified to enter first. After stuffing a jade card to Yang Chun, they took Yang Chun directly into the formation. Ing Mei didn't pay much, so he was not qualified to go in with Yang Chun. The range covered by the formation was not large, only a few hundred feet. The center was the portal of the ruins, and the portal filled with devil chi only occupied a few dozen feet. Standing outside the portal of the ruins, Yang Chun had the opportunity to observe the portal carefully. It was said to be a portal, but in fact, it was a huge round stone slab with countless exquisite patterns carefully carved on it. In the middle of the patterns, there was a flash of spiritual power from time to time. Unlike the occasional flash of spiritual power, the entire round stone slab was wrapped in a layer of shiny black devil chi. The devil chi didn't look thick, and it didn't release any aura. In this regard, it was similar to the current 9 nether flying sword. Seeing that Yang Chun was looking at the thin layer of devil chi with some disapproval, the old devil in the lead warned him solemnly, "Don't look at this devil chi as inconspicuous. It's very dangerous, so be careful." Yang Chun's safety was now related to whether everyone could enter the ruins of Mental Demon Sect. So everyone was very concerned. Although the others didn't speak, they all nodded repeatedly. They were all people who had suffered greatly from this thin layer of devilish chi, so they naturally had a deep understanding of how formidable this devilish chi was. When it came to understanding devil chi, there were certainly few people who could surpass Yang Chun now. Yang Chun crouched down and stretched out his hand to gently touch the layer of devil chi. The old devil next to him was about to stop him when he suddenly remembered that Yang Chun was a master at purifying devil chi and that Yang Chun's movements looked very cautious. He resisted the reminder and watched patiently on the side. In the past, when the old devils touched the devil chi like this, it would directly trigger a violent attack, and they would unconsciously produce a heart demon, which would take a long time to adjust. This was just a light touch. If they dared to take a step inside, the heart demon would absolutely flare up, and the whole person would become crazy, living a life worse than death. There were more than 1 or 2 people who didn't believe in evil. Many people thought that after many years of experience on the demon continent, they didn't care about the small invasion of devil chi. There were also dozens of people who had fallen and lost their lives next to this door, all of whom were experts at the late and peak to Shang stage. After so many lessons, people finally realized how powerful it was and didn't dare to take a step inside casually. The people inside and outside the array all looked at Yang Chun eagerly, waiting for the result of his touch. Chapter 1059. An ordinary person's reaction would be to jump back, as if they had been electrocuted at the slightest touch. Then, they would immediately calm down and meditate, forcibly suppressing the restlessness in their hearts. However, Yang Chun was different. When he reached out to touch the black demonic aura, he acted as if he did not feel anything. He acted as if nothing had happened, and there was not the slightest unusual expression on his face. Under everyone's dumbfounded expressions, Yang Chun simply went one step further. As if he had stretched out his hand into the water, he waved it left and right a few times. Then, he nodded, waved his hand, and stood up as if nothing had happened. The group of demon sect experts was first shocked, but then they were overjoyed. Yang Chen's performance fully showed that he could effectively deal with the demonic aura. This also meant that entering the ruins was no longer a dream, but a reality that would happen in the near future. The old demons were overjoyed, but so was Yang Chen. The density of the demonic aura was even a bit stronger than the 9 nether flying swords. However, it did not affect Yang Chen too much. It seemed that the 9 nether flying sword would have many more high-quality tonics. Seniors, please step back a little. Yang Chen instructed a few old demons not far away from him. The dozen or so old demons did not have any objections. All of them stepped back a little and made space for him. A pitch-black flying sword appeared in Yang Chen's hand. Then, Yang Chen easily pointed the tip of the flying sword at the black, demonic aura. Boom! It was as if the demonic aura, which had been condensed and compressed countless times, was broken on the surface. A crazy airwave spread out in all directions with the tip of the sword as the center. It was unknown what condensed the demonic aura on the door of the ruins. It was extremely dense, but no one was controlling it. The 9 Abyss flying sword easily began to absorb the energy. It did not encounter any resistance, nor was there anything to fight over it. Maintaining this posture, Yang Chen no longer moved. Everyone could only see Yang Chen holding a flying sword and plunging it into the devil chi. At first, there was a strange phenomenon, but after that, there was no more movement. No one knew what the effect was. They were all guessing and waiting anxiously. Some people began to carefully stare at the black flying sword in Yang Chen's hand. No one knew what they were thinking. More people began to check their equipment, preparing for the next step. Yang Chen maintained that action and did not move for a long time and did not speak. Everyone did not know how the effect was. But soon, everyone had no more doubts. The black demonic aura on the door seemed to have changed slightly in the past half a day. The place where the tip of the sword was pointing began to slowly become thinner, which then affected the surrounding area. With the tip of the sword as the center, a circle of about 3 meters in circumference was formed. There was already very little demonic aura in this circle, especially where the tip of the sword was pointing, which was already completely exposed to the stone slab below. However, it seemed that the demonic aura beyond 3 meters wasn't affected at all, while the tip of the sword could only affect such a small area, which seemed a little slow. A day later, there was no more demonic aura within 3 meters, and Yang Chen moved to another place and repeated the same action. The stone slab was several hundred meters in circumference. Given Yang Chen's speed, wouldn't it take him dozens of days to completely absorb it? But they had already waited for several hundred years, so they weren't afraid of this final shiver. Everyone patiently waited for Yang Chen to carefully work on it. While Yang Chen was working on something else, an old devil was a little curious and reached out to touch the area he had already worked on. In his opinion, most of the demonic aura had already been removed, and only a few wisps of it were left, so it shouldn't have any effect. But the result was contrary to everyone's expectations. As soon as the old devil's hand touched the wisps of black chi, his entire body twitched wildly, as if he had been electrocuted. His hands and feet didn't listen to him at all. He couldn't even speak, and could only let out a shrill scream in the end as his body was thrown high into the air and crashed heavily more than 30 meters away. Still in the air, the old devil started to cough up a few mouthfuls of blood. After landing, he endured the pain and frustration of his inner demons as he took out several elixirs from his chinquin bag and stuffed them into his mouth. Then, he immediately sat cross-legged to forcibly suppress his inner demons and recover from his injuries. With only a wisp of demonic aura left, the others didn't dare act rashly and obediently stayed behind to watch Yang Chen's actions, waiting for him to purify the last wisp of demonic aura on the door. Fortunately, Yang Chen didn't make them wait too long. The 9 nether flying sword absorbed the demonic aura at a constant speed. After more than a month, all the areas had been swept clean, and only some places still had wisps of demonic aura. This time, no one dared act ahead of time, and instead asked Yang Chun to purify the remaining demonic aura as well. Yang Chun did as he was told, and it took him another 2 or 3 days to completely absorb the remaining demonic aura that had escaped the net. The circular stone slab of the door to the ruins was completely exposed, and the array pattern on it was clearly visible. The old devils could also see the flickering traces of spirit energy on it. The method to open the door was recorded on the incomplete jade slip. The old devils were already prepared. They each took a position and then struck out with their magic arts. For hours later, the circular stone slab gradually lit up. Following a series of rumbling sounds, the center of the stone slab suddenly caved in, forming a spiral staircase that led straight to the underground. The door has been opened. Array countdown begins. After a moment, the array outside lit up and returned to normal. Everyone understood that the array would strictly determine the time for everyone to enter the door according to the price they paid. Under the gaze of the people outside the array, Yang Chun walked out of the array and met up with Li Cheng and the others. Before they started, the old devils decided that even if Yang Chun and the others went in, they could only be in the last batch of people who didn't pay any price. It was impossible for Yang Chun to get paid and enjoy priority. He couldn't take all the good things. The dozen or so old devils who had been inside the array couldn't care about anything else at this time. After activating the array, they rushed into the door, quickly went down the stairs, and disappeared into the circular entrance. As time went by, after 3 days, there were only a dozen or so people left in the valley, and these were all guys who didn't pay any price. Calculating the time, it was time for Yang Chun and the others to go in. Li Cheng took the lead and rushed into the array, quickly entering the door, followed by the 4 women. "Master, we are very interested in your black flying sword." Yang Chun was about to leave, and several old demons who had vaguely formed a circle laughed. An old demon sneered and asked, "I don't know if Grandmaster is willing to part with his treasure and let us appreciate it." Chapter 1060. These guys have been waiting for an opportunity. Li Cheng had the wind strike Dharma treasure in his hand, so they did not dare to act rashly. The 4 women had been moving together, and with the black tortoise shield protecting them, they probably had no chance. The only chance was when Yang Chun separated from Li Cheng and the 4 women. Yang Chun would definitely not be the first to enter the portal. Who knew what was inside? At this time, Li Cheng, who had the strongest attack power, would definitely enter first. Then Sun Qingxue with the black tortoise shield would be the second, followed by the 4 women. Yang Chun would definitely bring up the rear and not put his women in danger. They had calculated very accurately. Yang Chun and the others entered the portal in this order. When the last of the 4 women, Shi Shanshan, disappeared at the entrance of the portal, more than a dozen old demons had already vaguely surrounded Yang Chun. When Yang Chun was purifying the devil chi in the portal, these old guys clearly saw that all the credit seemed to go to the black flying sword, and Yang Chun almost had no effect at all. Greed had blinded their judgment, and these people had completely forgotten Yang Chen's leisurely performance when he used his finger to test the strength of the devil chi at the beginning. Everyone felt that Yang Chen's black flying sword was the key to purifying the devil chi, so they began to covet the flying sword. There was such a strong devil chi on the portal, who knew if there was more inside. If they could get their hands on this sword, even if they were the last to enter, they might have a good chance. Grasping the right opportunity, Yang Chun was indeed surrounded by everyone, and no one came to save him. The old demons were excited. Apart from the black flying sword, Yang Chun had a lot of good things on him. If they could capture all of them in one fell swoop, the benefits would be no less than entering the ruins of the mental demon sect. Although some people had sworn on the big heart demon oath not to attack Yang Chun, that was before the portal was opened. Now, no matter what they did, they would not break the oath. This was a God-given opportunity. If they did not take action, they would be letting God down. Black flying sword? Are you talking about this one? Yang Chun did not feel surprised at all. He just obediently took out the 9 secluded flying sword, waved it a little, and asked the old guy in front of him, "Yes, this is it. Put down the flying sword, and I will spare your life." Opposite him, The old devil had a sneer on his face, and no longer had any hope that Yang-chun would be able to open the door. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the 9 nether flying sword, as if he was looking at a peerless beauty. Shua! Yang-chun directly raised his hand and threw the flying sword in front of the old devil. The flying sword spun a few times in the air before its tip plunged down and directly stabbed into the ground more than 2 feet in front of the old devil. The hilt was still trembling, and the black blade was indescribably dazzling. They hadn't expected Yang-chun to abandon the sword so straightforwardly. This could only mean one thing, and that was that Yang-chun no longer had anything to protect his life, and was at their mercy. What a joke! If more than 10 great ascension experts couldn't easily take down an early nascent soul junior, that would really be too unreasonable. Yang-chun was very cooperative, which put them in a very good mood. Previously, Yang-chun and Li Chung had relied on their protective magic treasures and flying windstrike magic treasures to make everyone in the valley lose face. Now, they had finally won it back. The old devil laughed and said to Yang-chun, "As long as you cooperate, I'll spare your life." Laughing proudly, he took a slight step forward and reached out to grab the hilt of the 9 nether flying sword. Shua! The old devil easily pulled out the flying sword and held it in front of his eyes. Just as he was about to examine it carefully, a hair-raising aura suddenly came from his hand. Pale with fright, he was about to throw the 9 nether flying sword far away when he abruptly realized that he couldn't move at all. It was as if a body-immobilizing spell had been cast on his whole body, and he couldn't move even the tiniest muscle. Not only that, it was as if he was in a strange space where he couldn't see or hear anything, and it was frighteningly silent. An indescribable irritation suddenly welled up in his mind, and he wanted to shout but couldn't. Depressed, his body was finally able to move. But the first thing he did after he could move was to spit out a mouthful of blood. His entire face flickered with all sorts of expressions as he spat out mouthful after mouthful of blood. In a short while, the ground in front of him was completely stained red. The other old devils around him were alarmed. It was clear that they had misjudged the situation. At this moment, their first reaction was to escape immediately. It was just that it was already too late to think of escaping now. With a bang, the 9 nether flying sword exploded into a black fog that blotted out the sky and enveloped everyone, including Yang-chun. Once they were enveloped in the black fog, they could no longer see or hear anything. Even their divine senses couldn't extend very far, and they could only detect things within 2 feet of themselves. Tiny black dust particles entered their mouths, noses, eyes, and ears, causing them to tremble in disbelief. It was as if their bodies had been hacked into pieces, and their flesh and blood flew off bit by bit to fall into the air. The whole scene was like a sea of blood slaughterhouse. If anyone could see what was going on inside the black fog, they would definitely be scared out of their wits. After a while, the black fog gradually thinned and condensed in one direction before quickly turning back into the black flying sword. Apart from Yang-chun, there was no one else in sight. Just like that, the dozen or so old guys who had designs on Yang-chun had disappeared without a trace. Overestimating yourself, Yang-chun put away the 9 nether flying sword, shook his head, and then walked into the portal of the ruins as if nothing had happened. His figure soon disappeared from the portal. Is it all settled? As soon as he stepped out of the portal, Yang-chun heard Gao Yu's familiar voice, and a smile appeared on Yang-chun's face at once. The 4 women and Li Chung were all in the air. Yang-chun jumped and floated to everyone's side, and then answered Gao Yu's question with a smile. "It's settled, it's all right." After giving the 4 women a smile, Yang-chun began to look around. The place where everyone was now was the center of a huge plain. The plain had a radius of thousands of miles, and at the end of the distant plain was a circle of undulating mountains. The plain and the mountains were densely covered with jungles. Standing on the ground, they couldn't see the surrounding scene at all, as it was all blocked by the jungle. For some unknown reason, there was not a trace of demonic aura in this space. It was extremely strange. Chapter 1061. The demonic energy is absorbed and condensed by the array on the stone slab of the portal of the ruins. It can't diffuse here at all. Li Cheng saw Yang Chen's doubts and quickly explained. Only then did Yang Chen understand. He looked around again, only to find that there were only a few of them here. The old devils who had already come in had already gone somewhere else. Within a radius of dozens of miles, there was no one else. It's a technique that can control the inner demons. It's very interesting. It's worth a look, Li Cheng said, while looking around to determine the direction to go. He couldn't see anything at all with the naked eye. This was definitely the mountain gate of the Demon Heart sect, but the specific location of the main hall had long been surrounded by these dense jungles after so many years. Even if he opened his divine awareness, he couldn't find the specific location in a short time. It was estimated that after those old demons came in, they just randomly chose a direction and then tried their luck. No one knew where the good things inside were, so they could only use this method. Li Cheng had no better way. After all, it was a place that no one had been to. It was the first time in tens of thousands of years, or even longer, that it was open for the first time. It was normal to not be able to find the way. There was spiritual power distributed in all directions around, but it was very uneven. Moreover, it looked desolate here. It was unknown how long the protective array inside had been ineffective. At least from the entrance of the portal, it had been surrounded by jungle plants, and there was a sense of vicissitudes. Ling, take a closer look at which direction is it. It was obviously not a good idea for everyone to search like this. Yang Chen turned to Gong Sunling and asked her about the line of defense that everyone wanted to explore. Naturally, Gong Sunling, who had the Mountain River geographical map, was the most suitable person to find the ruins. As long as they walked around this area, basically all the terrain would be formed in the Mountain River geographical map. As the owner of the Mountain River geographical map, Gong Sunling could easily find any suspicious location. Under the guidance of Gong Sunling, the group of people sat in the shuttle and circled around the plain. In less than half a day, the mountains and rivers of thousands of miles had been formed in a Mountain River geographical map. Soon, Gong Sunling found something unusual. There are a lot of building ruins on the surrounding mountains in all four directions, but they are all very dilapidated. I can't tell what kind of buildings they are. Gong Sunling pointed in four directions and said to Yang Chen. Yang Chen had already opened up his spiritual consciousness to the maximum and had already probed the mountains thousands of miles away. Using his divine senses, he sensed the figures of the old devils scattered in all directions and analyzed which direction had the most old guys. Where are the traces of the spell formation? Yang Chen asked again. After thinking for a while, he added, the traces of the strongest defensive spell formation. Also, the location where the spirit veins are most concentrated. The best things would definitely be the best protected, so the strongest defensive array formation would definitely protect the things that were most needed. Spirit veins were the foundation of a sect. As long as they found these two things, they wouldn't have to worry about not finding something good. The direction in which the old devils had the most people seemed to be the largest spirit vein. However, if a great sealing array was opened for something like a spirit vein to be used to protect the best thing, it would definitely be the one that consumed the most spirit energy. The spirit vein with the strongest spirit energy now wasn't necessarily the same spirit vein with the strongest spirit energy in the past. After tens of thousands of years, or even longer, who knew what changes there would be? Gong Sunling was an array cultivator herself, and her sensitivity to arrays naturally couldn't be matched by others, especially with a cheat like the Mountain River geographical map. In particular, there was a cheat-like thing like the geographical map of mountains and rivers. After careful analysis and comparison, two places were identified. Both places were basically in the same direction, and both matched these two characteristics. There were traces of an array, and there were dried-up spirit veins in the surroundings, which were now brewing up some weak spirit energy. In fact, there were more than 20 other places that matched these two characteristics, but the arrays in these two places were more special. One was the largest, covering a huge building complex, and the other was the smallest, only the size of a room. The arrays in these two places had already failed, but they were the most suspicious. Others didn't have Gong Sunling's means, so they could only look for the spirit vein that seemed to have the strongest spirit energy at the moment. Little did they know that the reason why those spirit veins were so strong was that they had never been consumed and had always been nurturing. Although they wouldn't say that they didn't gain anything by finding the old devils over there, they certainly wouldn't be the biggest winners. At least, Yang Chun had already discovered that the 20 or so places with traces of arrays were basically the ones that the old devils who had entered first were looking for. After all, they had been here for 3 days, and the area of tens of thousands of miles was enough for them to eliminate some of the impossible places. It was just that no one could tell which of the remaining 20 or so places it was, so they could only occupy one place for the time being and carefully search and study it. This was a job that depended on luck, so it was naturally a test of everyone's eyesight and luck. In the direction that Yang Chun and others rushed to, there were 2 old devils, but the 2 old guys were concentrated on the traces of the largest array in the area. There was a large building complex there, and it would take time to find something suitable. This area was almost 400 or 500 miles in radius, and the 2 old devils each occupied a direction and searched carefully. In other directions, there were already a few sporadic figures looking for the places with traces of the array. It was estimated that it was the second batch of masters who came in. The area was so large that it couldn't be controlled by a few people. Seeing this situation, Yang Chun simply went to the smallest place first. The size of a room, it wouldn't take long to search it. Gong Sunling pointed the way, and Yang Chun drove the shuttle, wrapped in the sea-pouring jasper lamp, quietly bypassed the large building complex from the underground and went straight to the small area that was protected. When they arrived at the place, everyone came out of the shuttle and looked at the small ruins covered by various plants in front of them, and couldn't help but sigh. No matter how powerful the array was, it seemed that it couldn't compete with the years. The array had completely failed. It should have been a stone room that was originally protected, but now the stone room was also rooted by various jungle plants and collapsed for an unknown period of time. The hard stones in some places had also been turned into a pool of fine sand by the wind and rain. Only in a few corners could the corner of some stone sculptures be exposed. "Let's look for it," Li Cheng called, and everyone began to search carefully here. The place was really not big, and everyone was a Yuanying stage cultivator, so it was easy to dig 3 feet into the ground. Soon, Shi Shanshan found a piece of jade slip that looked a little incomplete from the ground. Chapter 1062. What's so good about it? Can you let this old man have a look? While Shi Shanshan was examining the jade slip with her divine senses, an abrupt voice suddenly rang out. The owner of the voice had originally thought that his sudden voice would definitely make these juniors jump in fright. But long after he had spoken, they didn't even show the slightest bit of surprise, as if they had already known that he would be following them. "It's just a tattered jade slip. Let's talk after we've finished reading it." Yang Chun didn't even turn his head and said a sentence. He didn't take the guy behind him seriously at all. The old devil who had spoken could be considered a quick-witted person. He hadn't been one of the first few to come in, but had been in the middle and had probably set off half a day earlier than Yang Chun and the others. After coming in, the old man had been mulling it over. Because they had come in almost 2.5 days later, they wouldn't be able to catch up with the old guys who had come in the beginning. But he wasn't willing to come out empty-handed. After thinking it over, he felt that Yang Chun and the others were still a little mysterious, and that they might be able to gain something. Thus, the old devil stood guard near the door and waited for Yang Chun and the others to come in. As the old devil had expected, as soon as Yang Chun and the others came in, they searched in a different direction from the others. The old devil was pleasantly surprised, and in the end, he decided to follow Yang Chun and the others quietly. However, Yang Chun's flying shuttle was too fast for the old devil to catch up. But he wasn't afraid of losing them, because the old devil had a magical cloud ferret pet, which could track a person's scent from thousands of li away. Before Yang Chun and the others had come in, the old devil had already made the cloud ferret remember Yang Chun and the others' scents. Thus, no matter how fast Yang Chun and the others were, the old devil still lagged far behind. The reason why Yang Chun wanted to sneak around those old guys wasn't because he was afraid of trouble, but because he wanted to buy time and avoid being disturbed. After all, there were so many destinations to choose from now, and it would be troublesome if others found out which one he had chosen, so he didn't start a fight along the way. After coming over to search, Yang Chun and Li Chung soon found the old guy who had followed them secretly. But the old devil was alone, and no one present would care, so they didn't expose him and just minded their own business as they searched. Now that the old devil had jumped out on his own, no one paid much attention to him. What everyone was concerned about was what was recorded on the broken jade slip that Sir Shanshan had found. "Brat, don't be so shameless." Hearing Yang Chen's nonchalant words of asking him to wait, the old man was instantly enraged. When did the dignified Desheng stage demonic cultivators suffer such anger from the younger generation? He immediately flared up. "Do you want to die?" Li Cheng was even angrier. He turned his head and glared at the old man. In Li Cheng's hands, there was a magic treasure that could strike like the wind. An expert who was stronger than the old man was also turned into dust under one strike. This was something he had seen with his own eyes. Even if there was only one strike left, it wasn't something the old man could withstand. He was the only one here, so it was better not to suffer a loss. Looking at the old devil who had suddenly become well-behaved, Sun Qingshu couldn't help laughing out loud next to him. Sun Qingshu's laughter instantly made the old devil blush, but he didn't dare say anything out of fear of Li Cheng next to him. He could only glare fiercely at Sun Qingshu with hatred in his eyes, then turn his head away and say nothing more. Sir Shanshan had already quickly finished reading the records on the jade slip, and then gave it to Yang Chun with a calm expression. Yang Chun took it and scanned it with his divine sense. There wasn't much content, and it didn't take long for Yang Chun to understand. After that, Yang Chun gave the jade slip to Li Cheng, who in turn gave it to Sun Qingshu. After a circle in the hands of Gao Yu and Gong Sun Ling, the jade slip finally returned to Yang Chen's hands. "Let's see what's inside." After getting the jade slip, Yang Chun had no intention of showing it to the old devil at all, and directly put it away in his chinquin bag. The old devil, who was standing dumbly on the side, was fuming with rage at this scene. From the looks of it, these young people didn't take him seriously at all and acted as if they hadn't seen him. What could be more infuriating than such blatant neglect? He almost couldn't help but explode, but in the end, he was intimidated by Li Cheng and didn't dare act rashly. What was recorded on the tattered jade slip wasn't any precious technique or elixir recipe, but a simple introduction to the mental demon sect. How the mental demon sect had been formed, how many years it had been here, how their ancestors had relied on a wisp of demonic chi to establish the sect, and so on. If this jade slip had been given to any of the old devils, it was likely that they would have thrown it away straight away. But before the old devil had seen it, he had already thought that it was some incredible record, and his heart itched uncontrollably. He had done almost everything he could to take a look at its contents. While the others searched for more clues in the ruins, Yang Chun stood on the side in a daze. This jade slip recorded everything in detail, especially how the ancestor of the mental demon sect had used a wisp of demonic chi to establish the Tao, which was especially vivid. There was even a record of when the demonic chi had appeared. According to this record, the demonic chi hadn't been born on the demon continent, but had suddenly appeared one day. According to the mental demon sect ancestors' conjecture, it was possible that some point on the demon continent had suddenly connected with another world, which was why the demonic chi had seeped out. At first, the demonic chi hadn't been strong, and there had only been faint wisps. The mental demon sect ancestor had been attacked by the demonic chi. In the process of fighting it, he had discovered the benefits of tempering the inner demon with the demonic chi. Thus, he had specially spent several hundred years studying it before he had mastered the cultivation method of the inner demon and founded the mental demon sect. That was all that was recorded in this tattered jade slip. While Yang Chun was pondering, Gong Sunling cheered as she found another jade slip, which was also tattered. Next to her, the old devil was delighted, but then he immediately sensed a gaze that made him feel pressured. He glanced at Li Cheng, who was staring at him with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. The old devil felt a chill in his heart, and he obediently shrunk his neck, not daring to move. "It's still a story. So boring," Gong Sunling mumbled after scanning it once, then handed the jade slip to Yang Chun. "This is the real treasure." Yang Chun took it and scanned it with his divine sense. Then his smile grew wider as he said casually. Chapter 1063. The Real Treasure. Listening on the side, the old devil's heart trembled, and he finally couldn't help making a move. Yang Chen's hand shook violently, and he grabbed a green light which had flown to his hand. The green light stopped and turned back into a small green sable, which was struggling incessantly as Yang Chun gripped its neck. The old devil had already taken out his flying sword, but when he saw this scene, he was suddenly alarmed. He could no longer care about attacking Yang Chun, and quickly retreated to escape. That small green sable was the clouded sable which he had used to track Yang Chun and the others. The clouded sable was extremely fast and soundless. If it wasn't for their master and pet relationship, even the old devil himself wouldn't have been able to detect it. With the clouded sable's help, the old devil had already plotted against several experts with higher realms than him without fail. Just now, the old devil had ordered the clouded sable to snatch the jade slip from Yang Chen's hand. Despite its extreme speed, Yang Chun had actually been able to catch it. This speed and accuracy alone weren't something an ordinary person could achieve. The clouded sable had previously been able to plot against a Deshang expert, but now it had been caught by Yang Chun. If he didn't run now, when would he escape? Unfortunately, the old devil's calculations were still a little wrong. The pressure Li Cheng put on him was so great that he didn't even notice that Gong Sunling had already prepared pocket. His figure flashed, and he fled dozens of feet away. After running for a while, the old devil realized that something was wrong. It seemed that no one was chasing him. When he turned his head, he didn't see anyone, and his divine senses couldn't detect anyone either. How is this possible? Yang Chen's group of 6 had been where they had been just a moment ago, so why was there no one now? The old devil didn't believe it, so he plucked up his courage and turned back. What excited the old devil was that there really wasn't a single person in the ruins, and he didn't know where Yang Chun, Li Cheng, and the others had gone. The old devil was overjoyed. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. No matter what, he had to see what the real treasure Yang Chun was talking about was. Having made up his mind, he quickly started to search carefully on his own. Gong Sunling put away the geographical map of the mountains and rivers, and her face was full of smiles. There was another master of the Deshang stage. The mountain river geographical map was getting more and more powerful. Handing the jade slip to Li Cheng, Yang Chun began to ponder again. This jade slip recorded the reason why the sect had sealed the mountain and left. The demonic qi was getting thicker and thicker. It was no longer possible to approach the center of the demonic qi. The surrounding demonic beasts had all been demonized, and their strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Most of the mental demon sect disciples could no longer withstand this level of demonic qi. Although the array formation left behind by the sect could effectively block the demonic qi, it was not a long-term solution. The demonized demonic beasts formed groups and began to target the mental demon sect. Countless disciples who had gone out to gain experience were slaughtered, and the demonic qi was also frantically seeping in. It was no longer possible to stay here, and the sect could only choose to leave. However, although the people had left, the foundation left behind by the sect could not be lost. In particular, some of the pure mental demon magic treasures left by the ancestors, which relied on the demonic qi to refine, had yet to be completed. As a last resort, the sect could only seal the mountain gate and leave it for future descendants of the sect to open. To completely solve the problem of the demonic qi, they needed to destroy the center of the demonic qi. The trouble was that the ancestors of the mental demon sect, who had the highest cultivation, couldn't do anything about that point. According to the speculation of the sect's ancestors and later masters, that point was a point that crossed the two realms. To destroy it, they needed to have the power to cut off space. It was almost impossible to have such an ability, unless they could get another magic treasure that could cross the two realms. Gong Sunling might have only seen the history of the mental demon sect and the reason for leaving, but Yang Chun saw more. The reason why he came here was to obtain some mental demon cultivation methods. Whether it was the Dao sect, the demon sect, or the demon clan, this mental demon cultivation method was a treasure. No one could escape from the mental demon, not even Yang Chun. However, if one could use the mental demon as a help in one's cultivation, the efficiency of one's cultivation would increase exponentially. Although these two jade slips did not record any of the cultivation methods of the Heart Demon sect, Yang Chun could probably guess some clues based on the origin of the Heart Demon sect. Since the ancestors of the mental demon sect used a wisp of demonic chi to trigger the mental demon and overcome it to establish the sect, what was the difference between this process and Yang Chun and the four girls using the 9 nether flying sword to cultivate the mental demon? Maybe Yang Chun and the four girls could also use this method to find the way to cultivate the mental demon. Perhaps the only difference was that when the ancestors of the mental demon sect, the demonic chi was not hot, but now the demonic chi was many times stronger and the difficulty of cultivation was higher. In this way, if they couldn't find the cultivation method of the Heart Demon sect, it wouldn't make much sense for Yang Chun and the four women. As for Li Cheng, Yang Chun even suspected that Li Cheng had mastered this method long ago. He had never been troubled by the demonic chi. What worried Yang Chun was the record in the jade slips. The demonized beast targeted the mental demon sect, which was really beyond Yang Chun's expectation. The consistent understanding of the demonized beasts was that they were eroded by the demonic chi and became monsters with only instincts and no thinking. Could it be that they could be commanded a long time ago? If this was the case, then the demon continent was likely to brew a huge disaster. Once the strength of the demonized beasts broke through the outer seal array, then the mortal world would suffer a catastrophe. One must know that the demonic chi could raise the strength of the demonized beasts by leaps and bounds. Now the demonic chi and the demonized beasts were trapped in the demon continent. Once it spread to the sea outside, and then to the Dao sect's territory, it would definitely be a devastating disaster. The problem was that no matter how good the seal array was, it was vulnerable in the face of the long river of time. This could be seen from the ruins of the mental demon sect. Now the seal array of the demon continent could still seal the demonic chi, but what about thousands of years later? The day when the spiritual power was exhausted, did it mean that the mortal world would become the demon world? Yang Chun was not a saint, but in the face of this kind of thing, he was also unyielding. Destroying the leakage point of the demonic chi was a great merit in itself. If there was a chance and ability, Yang Chun didn't mind getting some merit. Of course, these were all speculations, and no one could confirm it. Besides, a disaster was not imminent, and it was not certain whether the demonic chi would automatically shut down in the future. It was not realistic for Yang Chun to think about this now. While thinking, Gaoyu found another jade slip. On this jade slip, it was a method of merging and using the space between the two worlds speculated by the mental demon sect master. However, this method required another space point that could cross the two worlds to be successful, but in this mortal time, where could there be a space point that could cross the two worlds? This was not the space of the Chinkoan bag. It was just a kind of spell of the sleeve dimension, which was not a little different from crossing the two worlds. Crossing the space between the two worlds, this was not the spatial spirit cultivation method, which let the spiritual awareness enter another world. Just thinking of the spatial spirit cultivation method, Yang Chen's body suddenly shook, and he remembered a space that could cross the two worlds. Chapter 1064. The Immortal Beheading Platform was another Dharma treasure that Yang Chun thought of that could cross two realms. It was also the only space that could cross two realms. The immortal world could send criminals to the Immortal Beheading Platform, but the executioner had to enter from the mortal world. It was definitely crossing two realms. What was recorded on the jade slip was simply a method to refine space directly. However, it was just a guess and had never been tested. The person who came up with this method probably didn't have the opportunity or ability to test it. The place where the demonic aura erupted was definitely not a place that ordinary people could withstand. This could be seen from the fact that the entire mental demon sect was forced to move and seal the sect. Others didn't have Yang Chen's experience, so they naturally wouldn't have thought of something as heaven-defying as the Immortal beheading platform. However, in Yang Chen's eyes, this was simply a mouth-watering feast. However, at this time, Yang Chen wouldn't rashly have any ideas about the Immortal beheading platform. Not to mention whether this conjectural technique was useful, Yang Chen wasn't sure if he could find the entrance to the illusory Immortal beheading platform again. Li Cheng didn't say anything. In his eyes, he probably just saw some of the origins of the mental demon sect and the ability to cultivate using demonic aura. It didn't mean anything to him at all. However, in the eyes of the four women, these three jade slips were very different. Something that could make Yang Chen say it was a treasure was definitely something good. Their husband might not dare to boast about other things, but he definitely had a good eye for things. He would never misjudge anything that he fancied. The four women continued to search for other things that were worth seeing while pondering in their hearts. In fact, Yang Chen had already hinted enough. The mental demon sect could cultivate using demonic aura. What was the difference between this situation and them cultivating with a 9 nether flying sword with Yang Chen's help? It was just that the seniors of the mental demon sect had used hundreds of years to summarize a set of systematic techniques. Yang Chen's 4 wives, any one of them was a talented genius. They could naturally understand this kind of hint. Moreover, the contents of the jade slip not only introduced the origin, but also summarized some methods of using demonic aura. This was enough for the 4 women to combine their actual situation and summarize a set of effective cultivation methods. What kind of cultivation method was more suitable for him than tailoring it according to his own situation? If it was someone with mediocre aptitude, these words would naturally be nonsense. But these problems did not exist for the 4 women, especially with Yang Chen and Li Cheng by their side to guide them, so there was no need to worry. After a careful search, he didn't find anything else worth looking at. There seemed to be only these 3 jade slips left in this room. There were also some wooden memorial tablets that had long since decayed beyond recognition. Only a few pieces of memorial tablets, made of special materials, could still be identified. This place was obviously the mourning hall of the mental demon sect's patriarch. No wonder the mental demon sect had to protect it with a spirit vein. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, even with the protection of the spirit vein, it could not escape the fate of decay, leaving only these jade slips that had not been eroded by the wind. With these 3 jade slips, there was no need to consider anything else. Cultivation methods were not necessary. As for magic weapons, to be honest, everyone was from the Dao sects, and there was really no need for anything to suppress the heart demon. Those things were at best icing on the cake, and it was impossible to provide timely help. In this case, there was no need to quarrel with those old guys who were looking for things everywhere. It was important to find a safe place to figure out how to use the demonic aura first. The purpose of coming to the demon continent was to gain experience. In addition to killing experience, the rest was to be influenced by the demonic aura. Now, with the guidance of the seniors of the mental demon sect, it was a rare opportunity for everyone. When the 4 women talked about their plans, Yang Chen and Li Cheng had no objection. Li Cheng didn't know what to think, but Yang Chen also planned to try the cultivation method of refining the connection between the 2 realms. As for the choice of location, everyone gathered together and decided to choose near the portal of the mental demon sect. If they wanted to leave from here, they might have to go through that portal. With so many masters of the Deshang stage, wouldn't it be a pity to let them take the things and leave? Firstly, they did not get experience from them. Secondly, Gong Sunling's mountain river geographical map was that the more masters there were, the stronger they would be, and there would never be too many people. In terms of cultivation realm, Gong Sunling was the highest now. Because of the support of the mountain river geographical map, coupled with a group of masters of the Yuanying and Deshang stage unconsciously helping Gong Sunling refine her life source magic weapon. Gong Sunling's cultivation base had improved all the way, and she was the leader among the 4 women. Now, she was in the middle Yuanying stage, close to the late Yuanying stage. Next was Shi Shanshan. It had to be said that Shi Shanshan's combat awareness was definitely the strongest among the four women. She didn't even dabble in refining and alchemy, and focused on cultivation and flying sword. Under such circumstances, her will was tough. Her cultivation base was pure, and she had cultivated longer than everyone. Her realm was second only to Gong Sunling, and she had also reached the peak of the middle Yuanying stage. Then there was Gao Yu, because she was a water and fire cultivator, coupled with the nourishment of the water and fire dragon armor flying sword, and the help of the purple heart heavenly fire prepared by Yang Chun. Although she had not yet been able to absorb and refine the purple heart heavenly fire, she had also made great progress. She had broken through the early Yuanying stage and entered the middle Yuanying stage. The worst was Sun Qingxue. Although her aptitude was outstanding, because her cultivation base was abolished at the beginning, and because of Hua Waning's doting for a period of time, Sun Qingxue started a little later than the other women. But even so, she was already at the peak of the early Yuanying stage, and compared with Gao Yu, she was only a hair's breadth away. In terms of realm, it was Yang Chen's husband who was the worst among them. These days after coming to the demon continent, Yang Chen spent most of his time in the heart demon experience, and there was little killing. In addition, the 10 kinds of spiritual power of the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art were improved a lot slower than the other women. However, when it came to combat effectiveness, Yang Chen was not afraid of anyone except Li Cheng. At this point, all 4 of his wives knew each other, and no one would compete with Yang Chen on this. Li Cheng didn't seem to have any other changes. He was in the early Yuanying stage, and he didn't seem to be diligent in his cultivation, but Yang Chen always couldn't see through him. Fortunately, they were friends and not enemies now. Otherwise, Yang Chen really didn't know how to get along with Li Cheng. Soon, everyone rushed to the entrance of the portal. Here, Gong Sunling directly unfolded the Mountain River geographical map, covering all the surrounding 10 miles under the cover of the Mountain River geographical map. Chapter 1065. Now Gong Sunling was already in the middle Yuanying stage, and her control of the Mountain River geographical map was higher. She believed that even if someone came here without the abnormal strength of Yang Chen and Li Cheng, it would be impossible to find that they were already in the formation of the Mountain River geographical map. Once trapped in the formation, in addition to being trapped by the formation, they would also be attacked by the masters in the Mountain River geographical map, and they would not be able to escape. This was definitely a way to solve the problem once and for all. Anyway, these people would have to leave. As long as they came to this vicinity, those with low cultivation base and low defense would be directly sent into the Mountain River geographical map. As for those who were on guard, they would eventually be attacked by the 4 women. As long as those guys did not join forces, no one could resist the joint attack of the 4 women alone. The Mountain River geographical map, plus the 4 women, not to mention Yang Chen and Li Cheng, could definitely take a lot of advantages here. It could be said that Gong Sunling's Mountain River geographical map would be more powerful. It was a bit insidious to say, but on this demon continent, it was not a place to talk about morality. Those guys haven't paid attention to Yang Chen and the others yet. That was because they were still searching for good things. When they were free, the first thing they would deal with was Yang Chen and the others. The method of purifying the demonic qi was the reason for those people to take action. Who didn't know the benefits of the demonic bead? Yang Chen could completely purify. How could it compare to their own complete purification? This method must be in their own hands. Even if Yang Chen refused to hand it over, this person must be controlled. On the demon continent, there was no reason. The fist was the big reason. Li Cheng was very at ease with everyone. He sat directly on the ground, silently closed the door, and there was no defense at all. Next was Yang Chen, followed by the 4 women. Gong Sunling was the last one. She was also responsible for everyone's safety and vigilance. However, with the protection of the Mountain River geographical map, everyone could cultivate boldly with confidence. Even if there was any danger, there was no need to worry. The 4 women were all comprehending the way to fight against the heart devil, But Yang Chun began to carefully study the cultivation method of refining the space connection. He did not know how the ancestors of the mental demons sect imagined it. They actually wanted to refine it for their own use, even though it was a spatial point between the two realms. However, this was not wishful thinking. It was a very reasonable speculation. At the very least, based on Yang Chen's experience, this cultivation technique was absolutely practical, and it also had a unique understanding of the connection between the two worlds. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Chun had been to the spiritual realm and immortal realm in his previous life, and had detailed memories of transcending space and ascending, he might not have understood some of the explanations. Yang Chun couldn't help but be tempted. If Yang Chun could refine a highly operable cultivation technique and the entrance to the immortal beheading platform and integrate it into the immortal beheading saber, the immortal beheading saber would immediately have the power to sever space. This was a terrifying power that even with the blessing of Shao Tian, who could still be the opponent of Yang Chun. Just the study of the cultivation method, Yang Chun spent a whole half a year understanding it word by word, combining it with his own memory, carefully pondering the mystery and understanding the mystery of space. After half a year, Yang Chun finally breathed a sigh of relief and understood this cultivation method thoroughly. It must be said that the ancestor of the mental demon sect was indeed powerful. Just by relying on imagination, he could deduce this cultivation method to this point. Although there were still some flaws, there were also flaws caused by the inability to actually operate it. Yang Chun could completely rely on his own experience to make up for it. The rest of the matter was to experiment on the entrance to the immortal beheading platform. But at this moment, Yang Chun was a little hesitant. First, the immortal beheading platform has not been touched for a long time. I don't know if I can reach the entrance. Second, if I refine the entrance to the immortal beheading platform, if there is trouble in the immortal world in the future, I don't know how to solve it. But soon Yang Chun let go of these worries. Whether the entrance to the immortal beheading platform could be found or not, as long as he tried it, there was no need to worry at all. As for the trouble in the future, because he left the immortal beheading platform, the executioner did not die, and it was impossible to replace another executioner in the mortal world. This was a big trouble. If he refined the entrance, maybe he could still enter and exit at any time. Isn't this the way to solve the problem? The only trouble was that Yang Chun hoped to refine the entrance to the immortal beheading platform and the immortal beheading blade together. Now the immortal beheading blade has reached the final stage of the life source magic weapon tempering. It will take some time to complete, and the time may be delayed. Not to consider these first, Yang Chun still wanted to try to find the entrance to the immortal beheading platform again. The last time he entered the immortal beheading platform, it was because the executioners in the world entered in a dream, but Yang Chun knew that the immortal world used a lot of power and consumed the cultivation base of many masters, using the dream reversal technique, which was achieved through the entrance of the immortal beheading platform in the mortal world. Now he wanted to find the entrance to the immortal beheading platform alone, but it was not so easy. Yang Chun had not slept or had a dream for many years, and it was not so easy to relive it. The first thing was to sleep. With Yang Chen's cultivation base, he would not let himself fall asleep naturally no matter what. If he used medicine or other means, he could not guarantee that he could still dream, which was the problem. What's so difficult about this? After explaining the cultivation method to everyone, the women were very puzzled about Yang Chen's requirement to dream, but Li Cheng said, "As long as you're tired and can't recover, isn't it easy to sleep? If you fall asleep, you might be able to dream." Speaking of which, Yang Chun had forgotten the feeling of an ordinary person because he had cultivated for a long time. As long as he was tired, he would naturally sleep, and when he fell asleep, it was possible to dream. The method was a method, but for Yang Chun, it was a troublesome thing. It was not so easy to make Yang Chun, with his current cultivation base, tired and exhausted. Even if some methods could consume energy, it could not stop Yang Chun from recovering quickly. Do your best to attack and defend. Li Cheng saw that Yang Chun was so embarrassed. He seemed to be a little itchy and said with a smile, "It just so happens that I also want to try my skills. Let's have a fight, how about it?" With Li Cheng's proposal, Before Yang Chun had time to answer, the four women had already clapped their hands and cheered. They had already seen Yang Chen's skills, but Yang Chun had improved, and the women were not very clear about his strength. As for Li Cheng, he was even more mysterious. Now that he took the initiative to compete with Yang Chun, how could the four women not be happy? I'm afraid that fighting will alarm those people. Why don't we go to the mountain river geographical map to fight? Li Cheng looked at Yang Chun and said with a slight provocation, "Okay, let's fight." Yang Chun also wanted to measure Li Cheng's strength, and this proposal was exactly what he wanted, so he immediately agreed. Chapter 1066. No one has seen Yang Chun fighting with all his strength, including Yang Chun himself. In the mortal world, it seems that there has never been an opponent that required Yang Chun to go all out. But now there is one. Li Cheng could easily kill the great elder of the Taishaman with a sword. This strength has surpassed the strongest in the mortal world. With such an opponent, Yang Chun couldn't help but be excited. Everyone entered the mountain river geographical map. Even the Master Gong Sunling was no exception. No one wanted to miss this rare competition. Don't hold back. Li Cheng stared at Yang Chun, and his eyes were also excited. I know you are strong, but don't worry about hurting me. These words were simply arrogant to the extreme. Yang Chun now did not say anything else, just his spiritual sense of the human immortal third grade. The body refining arcane power of the yellow turban strongman was not something that ordinary masters could handle. Even if it was Elder Wu Xiong who had ascended, he would not dare to say that Yang Chun could not hurt him. But Li Cheng said so, and Yang Chun did not doubt it at all. This was not because Yang Chun knew the details of Li Cheng, but purely an intuition, the kind of intuition in the face of a peerless master. Since Li Cheng said so, Yang Chun did not intend to hold back, and naturally he would fight with all his strength. He shouted at Li Cheng, "Big brother, be careful," and rushed up directly. In the beginning, Yang Chun did not use magic weapons, but purely with his fists. He wanted to know the gap between himself and Li Cheng in all aspects. In the memory of his previous life, there was no concept of a peerless master like Li Cheng, and Yang Chun was also eager to know some details of Li Cheng. Come on. Li Cheng's eyes were also filled with excitement, and he also greeted it with his bare hands and punched out. Bang! The fists of the two collided firmly, and then Li Cheng let out a muffled groan, and his body flew back like a kite with a broken string. The power of the river turning power was not something that anyone could bear. It must be known that this was a cultivation method that only the yellow, turbaned strongmen in the immortal world could practice. Even the general Xian Immortal could not compete with it, let alone the human world. Even if Yang Chun has not experienced the baptism of various tribulations, and his body is not as strong as the real yellow turban strongman, but after all, the realm of the body refining technique has reached there. Li Cheng is simply not Yang Chun's opponent in terms of strength. In this case, once Yang Chun crosses the tribulation, his body will be strongly transformed. It can be said that every time the tribulation, the body's strength will be more than 10 times the original. Li Cheng's body flew far away, but he immediately controlled his figure in the air. He laughed and shouted, "Awesome!" With a little adjustment, he rushed towards Yang Chun again. Cheng is Li Chen's strength flew. He is Li Chen's body strength. This strength had already made Yang Chun have a whole new level of respect for him. In Yang Chen's imagination, even someone as powerful as Ho Yun might not be able to block his punch. Even if he borrowed strength, he would still be injured by the fist momentum. Li Cheng's performance was indeed impressive. When he saw Li Cheng flying over, Yang Chun naturally didn't want to show weakness. He swung his fist to meet Li Cheng's attack, and the two of them were locked in battle just like that. This time, Yang Chun didn't just fight with Li Cheng's fists, but he also used the attack method that he had practiced in the Demon Continent, which was simple, direct, and fierce. Not only that, but Yang Chun's movement technique had also become like a ghost. He was swift and agile, and his angles were strange. In an instant, Li Cheng was surrounded by Yang Chun silhouettes. To be precise, in Li Cheng's eyes, apart from Yang Chun's fist, he couldn't see anything else. However, Li Cheng was not so easy to provoke. With a long laugh, he immediately waved his fists and began to fight back. Banging sounds rang out incessantly, but the four women around them could no longer see the trajectories of the two people's attacks. They could only see two blurry shadows moving at lightning speed. There was one in each of them, and one in each of them. The divine awareness of the four women was firmly locked on Yang Chun and Li Cheng. This level of battle could definitely benefit them a lot. On Li Cheng's body, he didn't know how many punches from Yang Chun. This time, Li Cheng didn't borrow strength to fly out, and Yang Chun didn't give Li Cheng a chance to fly out. Almost as soon as he was punched in the chest, his body didn't move, and he was punched in the back again. The speed was unparalleled. Even if he borrowed strength from the outline, he couldn't do it. It seemed that Li Cheng also knew the power of Yang Chen. He didn't dodge at all. At the same time, he also looked at Yang Chen's flaws and kept waving his fist to fight back. The fist hit on Yang Chen's body with a dull sound. Both of them could find the position of the opponent's attack in an instant, and their combat awareness was almost equal. Often when Yang Chen hit Li Cheng, he would also suffer a heavy blow from Li Cheng. It must be said that Li Cheng's strength was still beyond Yang Chen's expectations. Even in terms of pure strength, Li Cheng was not as good as Yang Chen, but the difference was limited. The power of each punch could almost shake the tough skin tempered by Yang Chen's yellow, turban strongman body refining technique, and the power went straight to the internal organs. Fortunately, after all the power passed through the epidermal muscles and flesh, it was not so lethal. It just shook the internal organs. If Li Cheng's strength was a little stronger, Yang Chen's internal organs would also be shaken and injured. But even so, Yang Chen's internal organs had to bear a great power shock. This was also mixed with great pain for Yang Chen, who couldn't synchronize the strength of the body, refining technique, to the internal organs. However, the opponent, Li Cheng, was not easy. How could the strength of Yang Chen be borne by ordinary people? With a punch, almost the whole body was shaken. The place where the punch was hit often resulted in broken bones. Fortunately, Li Cheng's recovery ability seemed to be even more terrifying. Just between the two punches, the place that was injured by the punch could be restored to its original state. The most terrifying thing was that after each recovery, Li Cheng's part of the body seemed to be tougher than before. Although Yang Chen's punches were powerful, at this moment, it looked like he was helping Li Cheng temper his body. Similarly, Yang Chen's internal organs were the same. After each punch, Yang Chen would quickly use the yellow turban strongman body refining technique to recover quickly. After hundreds of consecutive punches, the internal organs that hadn't been tempered for a long time had also loosened a little. He began to use Li Cheng's punches to slowly begin the tempering. The more the two fought, the more they became addicted. They had forgotten the original intention at the beginning and were immersed in this process that could both vent and take the opportunity to gain experience. Chapter 1067. The four women watching from the outside couldn't feel the changes in their bodies, but the kind of combat experience used by the two made the four women feel like they had obtained a treasure, indulged in it, and could no longer extricate themselves. Attacking the enemy's weakness, speed, strength, angle, timing. Although Yang Chen and Li Cheng were just punching and kicking each other, the kind of combat awareness that came out of the Immortal beheading technique was unprecedented. The four women didn't even dare to slack off a little, for fear of missing any small battle scene. Unknowingly, this kind of brute force showdown had lasted for a whole day. Yang Chen's fist hit Li Cheng's body, and he could already feel the increasingly strong shock force. In the same way, Li Cheng's fist power seemed to be unable to have any shock effect on Yang Chen's internal organs. Increased the stakes. Li Cheng was getting more and more addicted. He suddenly shouted, and then didn't wait for Yang Chen to have any means. His spiritual awareness had already pierced Yang Chen like an invisible sword. Yang Chen's sea of consciousness had not yet been pierced by Li Cheng's spiritual awareness, and it had already begun to churn. Almost at the same time, Yang Chen's counterattack had already been launched. The powerful spiritual awareness of the three purities' secret art pierced Li Cheng's face. The two spiritual awareness intersected in the air, and made a loud noise out of thin air, which shocked the four women around them. The dissipated spiritual awareness even made the four women have to retreat a few dozen feet before they felt the oppression. This kind of scene made the four women all horrified. Yang Qin's spiritual awareness was powerful. The four women had already been mentally prepared, but they did not expect Li Cheng to be so terrifying. They didn't know what kind of secret this Li Cheng's family had to be able to train such a heaven-defying young master. Yang Chen, who was in the battle, was even more surprised than the four women. It must be known that Yang Chen was now practicing the three purities secret art passed down by the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. It was the trump card of the Tao ancestor. There was no need for Yang Chen to talk about the degree of strength, but Li Cheng was able to compete with Yang Chen in the battle of spiritual awareness, so Yang Chen couldn't help but admire him. Li Cheng's consciousness is pure and condensed, and it also carries a vast aura. Compared to Yang Chen's current grade 3 human immortal consciousness, it is not at all inferior. In some aspects, it was even better. How could Yang Chen not be puzzled? However, now was not the time to investigate how high Li Cheng's divine sense cultivation was, because when could he reach such a realm? The two of them were in the middle of a battle. If they were distracted for even a moment, their lives might not be on the line, but they would definitely suffer a few more blows. Even if Yang Chen's internal organs had improved a lot, he still didn't want to be beaten a few times for no reason. In a mountain-river geographical map, it was just like in the outside world. Time passed, the sun rose and set, there was almost no difference. This battle of the two people with spiritual awareness attacks lasted for almost 2 days and 2 nights again. In his previous life, Yang Chen did not have too strong achievements in the aspect of spiritual awareness. This life was only under the guidance of the three purities secret art. He had some advantages in spiritual awareness. Compared with the understanding of the fire control alchemy, it was not 1 or 2 grades worse. But in the battle with Li Cheng, Yang Chen really opened his eyes. Li Cheng's spiritual awareness attack definitely made Yang Chen feel overwhelmed. Even in the first 1.5 days, Yang Chen was almost suppressed by Li Cheng, and the occasional counterattacks were rare. This was definitely an experience that could not be asked for. Was there a better way to understand and master these spiritual awareness attack techniques than in actual combat? Yang Chen's understanding of spiritual awareness also became more and more clear in this continuous battle. Most of the things that he knew before, but didn't know why, had a clear answer in this battle. On this point alone, Yang Chen would benefit from it for a lifetime. Up to now, both of them had felt tired. If it was just the squandering of power, the two of them would not have been so exhausted, but the divine sense attacks, in addition to constantly tensing their nerves and dealing with the opponent's attacks while also having a counterattack, was the most exhausting process. However, the more they fought, the more the two did not intend to stop, but they were more energetic and attacked more fiercely. The four women watching on the sidelines could not keep up with the speed of the two people's attacks. Even if they used their spiritual awareness to lock tightly, they could not keep up with the pace of the two people. Often when they just figured out the mystery of a previous attack, when they came back to their senses, they found that the two had already exchanged at least 10 moves. But despite this, the four women still had a great harvest. Watching the battle between Yang Chen and Li Cheng for 3 days seemed to be more beneficial than being surrounded by groups of demonic beasts outside for a few months. Add spiritual power. Li Cheng shouted again. His voice was full of excitement. With the shout, his fist was already mixed with a surging spiritual power tide, smashing towards Yang Chen's head. Of course, Yang Chen was not willing to be outdone. The yin and yang 5 elements secret art was instantly operated to the extreme. The yin and yang 5 elements spiritual power was directly arranged into the yin and yang 5 elements formation. The two formations, wrapped in the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, directly bombarded Li Cheng's chest. At the same time, the reverse yin and yang 5 elements formation was arranged on his body, ready to meet Li Cheng's spiritual power bombardment. Boom! Almost at the same time, when the two heavy punches hit, A huge sonic boom spread far away. Both of their bodies shook, then they clenched their teeth and bombarded each other regardless. Now, every blow of the two people carried the power of heaven and earth. The momentum was so great that even the four women on the sidelines were a little shocked and worried. If such an attack fell on their body, if it was any one of them, they would not be able to bear it. Unless there was the mountain river geographical map or the black tortoise shield to protect the body, otherwise, there would only be serious injuries or even death. Yang Chun and Li Cheng, who were in the battle, all admired their opponents at the same time. Yang Chen's current Yin and Yang 5 elements formation strengthened the attack effect by at least double. Even if Yang Chun had not yet collected the great Yin and Yang 5 elements secret art, the attack power should not be underestimated. But Li Cheng was able to completely withstand it. It must be known that this was without using any magic weapon, just relying on his strong body and spiritual power defense. It had to be said that Li Cheng's strength was beyond Yang Chen's expectations. On the opposite side, Li Cheng was also full of surprise. The performance of this little guy, Yang Chun, was simply beyond Li Cheng's expectations. Originally, he thought that it was only a positive and negative Yin and Yang 5 elements attack, but he did not expect that it was also mixed with the heavenly spirit earth fiend Great Array. The attack power was so strong that he had to use his trump card to withstand it. After fighting for so long, the two of them finally felt like they could appreciate each other's talent. Chapter 1068. After adding spiritual power, the power of the attack was once again greatly improved. In particular, Yang Chen's spiritual power was directly mixed with the Yin-Yang 5 elements formation and the earthly evil spirit formation, which directly increased the power of Yang Chen's attack by several times. With the spiritual power shown by Li Cheng, it was really difficult. However, Li Cheng was not so easy to get along with. He used all his skills and blocked the attack of Yang Chen, and even had the strength to counterattack. However, in the face of Yang Chen's reverse 5-element spiritual power, the power of the attack was like entering a big millstone first, and after being worn down by 80 to 90%, it acted on Yang Chen's body. Blocking these attacks, Yang Chen was quite relaxed. However, Li Cheng's power was far more than that. His current spiritual power and spiritual awareness were also good. In summary, the characteristics were one word: pure. Pure to the point of making people's hair stand on end. Even the spiritual awareness of Yang Chen's 3 purity secret art and the spiritual power of the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art were not Li Cheng's opponents at this point. If Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was 80% pure, then Li Cheng was at least 95% pure. If Yang Chen's spiritual power had 60%, then Li Cheng had also reached more than 90%. This kind of purity was far from what Yang Chen could achieve with a simple refinement. But after the tempering of thousands of hammers and chisels, the effect could only be achieved after indescribable refinement. With Yang Chen's current cultivation base, it was far from comparable. As for other people, it was even more unimaginable. People thought that their spiritual power was already very pure, but at least more than 40% of the chaotic spiritual power was undetectable by the cultivators at this stage. The purified demonic bead had no side effects because of this. The cultivation base was not high enough, resulting in insufficient knowledge. Many of the shortcomings of cultivation were accumulated little by little in the spiritual world and the immortal world, so that at that time, it would take far more than the current stage to make up for it by several times, or even dozens of times. One of the effects of pure spiritual power was that it was exceptionally easy to control, and it had an unparalleled amplification effect on certain effects. Whether it was an attack or defense, it was not something that Yang Chen could look up to. If it were not for the addition of the Yin-Yang 5 elements formation and the Earth Dipper formation, Yang Chen would be dozens of streets behind Li Cheng. While Yang Chen was amazed, Li Cheng, who was opposite him, was also surprised. No one thought that Yang Chen would have such a skill. It was already surprising that he could cultivate the 5 elements of Yin and Yang, but it was even more surprising that he had the effect of the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. If it wasn't for the fact that it was far purer than Yang Chen's, Li Cheng would have made a fool of himself with the addition of the spiritual power attack. Even so, receiving Yang Chen's attacks was still very uncomfortable. Every strike would cause Li Cheng unbearable pain. But the more it was like this, the happier Li Cheng was. Similarly, the same was true for Yang Chen. A well-matched opponent was definitely the best whetstone for their cultivation. The more they went through such tempering, the better it was for their own control. No, just a few days of confrontation, Yang Chen felt that his internal organ tempering of the yellow-turbaned strongman body, refining arcane power of the river-turning realm, had reached a new level. If he experienced it a few more times, he might be able to enter the peak of the sea-turning strength by relying on this kind of confrontation. Li Cheng's every blow was like the best iron hammer, beating out the impurities in his body, making his whole body more well-proportioned. Such an opponent, such an opportunity, was simply a gift from heaven. He didn't know if Li Cheng felt the same, but Yang Chen could feel the changes in Li Cheng's body from the recoil of Li Cheng's body, and he thought the same thing in his heart. In such a situation, although the two were getting more and more tired, the more they fought, the happier they were. Under the excitement, the strength of the two seemed to have improved again, and they kept confronting each other, and it seemed that no one wanted to stop first. The full confrontation of the physical body, spiritual power, and spiritual awareness lasted for almost half a month. The power of the two was finally getting smaller and smaller, and the speed was getting slower and slower. In the end, it was simply a confrontation of will to see who would be the first to give up. Finally, Yang Chen and Li Cheng no longer had any strength left. After hitting each other with soft hands and feet, they both lay on the ground exhausted and didn't want to move even half a finger. The spiritual power had been consumed to the limit, and the spiritual awareness was almost exhausted. The physical body didn't even have the strength to support the two standing. As soon as they lay down, they closed their eyes and no longer made any extra movements. However, there were still differences between the two. In this situation, Li Cheng still began to slowly absorb spiritual power and began to recover, while Yang Chen closed his eyes and fell asleep sweetly. Originally, the purpose of this confrontation was to make Yang Chen tired and fall asleep. Everyone understood this. Anyway, this was the interior of the mountain river geographical map, and there were 4 women watching, so there was no need to worry about safety. The 4 women had been immersed in the wonderful battle confrontation between the two until the two stopped for a long time, and then they woke up one after another. The first to wake up was Shi Shan, then Gao Yu, then Gong Sunling, and finally Sun Qingxue. After this observation, all 4 women had great gains, and their faces were full of joy that couldn't be concealed. Looking at the situation of the two, Gong Sunling's mind moved, and the place where Li Cheng and Yang Chen were lying suddenly changed. Li Cheng quickly condensed a small spirit gathering formation, and the mountain river geographical map absorbed countless spiritual power and began to provide Li Cheng with recovery. On the side of Yang Chen, it became a comfortable bedroom. Yang Chen's body was lying on a soft and comfortable wooden couch, sleeping like a dead pig. The 4 women didn't do anything extra when they woke up, but after watching Gong Sunling finish the operation, everyone began to discuss with each other in another place that wouldn't disturb the two. The content of the discussion was naturally the gains and losses of the battle between Yang Chen and Li Cheng. This was a habit that everyone developed on the way to the demon continent. Every time after dealing with the sea beasts, they would make a small summary. The 4 women were all geniuses with excellent understanding, and the wisdom of the 4 people added up could let everyone gain something every time. The battle between their husband and the sworn brother let the 4 women see many things that they hadn't thought of before. The 4 people talked about their own insights, and no one hid anything. The more they discussed, the more excited everyone became. Just watching the summary of the battle lasted for almost 4 or 5 days. Then the 4 women also began their own small retreat to continue to digest these combat experiences. Chapter 1069. This time, Li Cheng's recovery cultivation lasted for a long time. In fact, Li Cheng was not only recovering, but his spiritual power recovery time was very fast. With the spiritual power support of the Mountain River geographical map, Li Cheng's spiritual power was fully restored in less than 2 days. As soon as the spiritual power was restored, it naturally led to the recovery of his spiritual awareness and physical body. But these were not important. The important thing was that Li Cheng found that his body refining technique had finally made progress. After being bombarded by Yang Chun for who knows how many tens of thousands of times, it was like kneading dough. After kneading, it would naturally become tendons. Now, it was a natural process. Li Cheng would certainly seize this opportunity to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Of course, Li Cheng did not forget to sigh at Yang Chen's perverseness while cultivating. Yang Chun, who was sleeping soundly, did not know Li Cheng's thoughts at all. He did not even notice that Gong Sumling had changed the surrounding situation for him. Now, his consciousness was standing at the entrance of the Immortal beheading stage. When Yang Chun came here, his body did not change at all. He really didn't know how this Immortal beheading stage was refined. Not to mention crossing the 2 realms, it could even use the dream reversal grand technique to let the mortal executioner enter. As Yang Chun expected, as soon as he entered the dream, Yang Chun stood at the entrance. There were a few celestial soldiers guarding here, but now he did not know where they had gone. The entrance was empty, and there was no one there. Looking at the door he walked out of, Yang Chun couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Here, he personally waved the Immortal beheading blade and killed places including the Jade Emperor, the Queen Mother, and the Tao ancestor Taishang Laojun. Those famous big shots couldn't escape the death of the Immortal beheading stage, which always made people feel the awe of the heavenly Tao. However, Yang Chun had no intention of going in. Who knows if he could come out after going in? Now that everything was on the right track, Yang Chun did not want to fail here. With Yang Chen's understanding and modifications, the mental demon sex guest cultivation technique was now extremely practical. Yang Chun was just outside the entrance, so he could also try to see if that cultivation technique was feasible. Yang Chun didn't know how long he would sleep for, so he just sighed for a while before he tried to refine the entrance to the beheading Immortal platform. As soon as he started, Yang Chun was ecstatic. According to the normal steps, it seemed that there were no accidents. Perhaps it was also because Yang Chun was the only executioner in the beheading Immortal platform, so the beheading Immortal platform had no resistance to Yang Chun. This allowed Yang Chun to easily come into contact with the point of crossing the 2 realms. The entrance was at this point. After completing this step, Yang Chun's confidence was greatly boosted. He began to carefully refine it bit by bit according to the instructions of the cultivation method. Before refining it, Yang Chun still found that his spiritual power was completely consumed. This should be caused by the previous confrontation. Even in his dream, he did not fully recover. Yang Chun was not worried. Just like Li Cheng, he first began to recover his spiritual power and then began to refine the entrance. It was easy to say, but it was not so easy to do. Don't look at the entrance of the beheading Immortal platform as a point of crossing the 2 realms. If you really wanted to refine it, it was not something that could be done overnight. It was normal to think about it. If Yang Chun wanted to enter the Immortal world according to the normal way, he had to at least cross the tribulation and ascend to the spiritual world, and then cross the tribulation to enter the Immortal world. The mortal world and the Immortal world were connected. In fact, it was at least across 3 realms. If it could be easily refined by a cultivator in the nascent soul stage, it would be a joke. Fortunately, Yang Chun was not a simple cultivator in the nascent soul stage. As time passed, his spiritual power was completely restored, and the progress of refining was a little faster. If he wanted to completely refine this entrance, he needed at least 4 complicated processes. Yang Chun was now carrying out the first and easiest step, which was to fix this space point so that he could touch it at any time. The speculation of the cultivation method was indeed somewhat unrealistic. Yang Chun only found out after he started. Of course, this was also because Yang Chun did not understand it, so there would be such a problem. Fortunately, the first process was not too complicated and dangerous. Yang Chun could carefully adjust during the refining process so that there would not be any accidents. This process alone took Yang Chun half a year's time. When Yang Chun finally finished the process, 10 months had passed in the outside world. Shua, Yang Chen's body sat up, and he finally woke up from his sleep. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Gong Suanling's smiling face. In the Mountain River geographical map, any movement of Yang Chun could be known by Gong Sunling. As soon as he sat up, he alarmed Gong Sunling and quickly appeared in front of Yang Chun. You woke up. Gong Sunling was purely happy, and there was an uncontrollable smile on her face. Although she didn't know why Yang Chun had to sleep, she supported any decision made by Yang Chun. It's just that Yang Chun slept for 10 months, and the women couldn't help but worry. If Li Cheng hadn't repeatedly said that Yang Chun was fine, Gong Sunling couldn't help but try to wake up Yang Chun. Soon, Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue also appeared in front of Yang Chun one after another, and so did Li Cheng. When he saw Yang Chun, he didn't say anything and gave Yang Chun a punch first. You really have a deep cover. Li Cheng teased Yang Chun and said with a smile on his face, I almost made a fool of myself. Big brother, same to you. Yang Chun responded with a smile, and his face was also full of uncontrollable happiness. After completing the first step of refining, Yang Chun would no longer have to enter a dream to get in touch with the entrance to the beheading Immortal platform. As long as he was willing, he could enter the beheading Immortal platform anytime and anywhere. Of course, Yang Chun had no plans to go in yet. What made him happy was that, in the battle with Li Cheng, he had learned a lot about the application of divine sense, as well as the benefits of purifying and condensing divine sense and spiritual power. This was a secret that could not be understood from anywhere. Everyone knew that whether it was spiritual awareness or spiritual power, the purer and more condensed the better. But to what extent, even Yang Chun did not have a specific concept in his previous life. Even if Yang Chun had reached the realm of great principal golden immortal in his previous life, he had never refined his spiritual awareness and spiritual power to the level of Li Cheng. At best, it was better than his current self. After really seeing Li Cheng's purity, Yang Chun really understood what kind of terrifying power it was, and it also gave Yang Chun a more specific direction for his future cultivation. Those guys outside, what's the situation now? After everyone greeted each other, Yang Chun couldn't help but ask about the masters who were hunting for treasures. Chapter 1070. Some people are still looking for it, and some people are already fighting. Gong Sunling had a mountain river geographical map in her hand. She was almost the best candidate for inquiring about the news, and immediately replied. This was a normal situation. Those old guys were not working together. After opening the portal, it meant that everyone had to fight separately. Few people paid attention to the people on the side of the entrance portal. Some people didn't find it at all, and some people found it and felt that it was not worth working on them. They still had to rely on the illusion to cover, and they planned to fish in troubled waters. What could they do by staying at the door? The four women have made progress again, and even Sun Qingxue, who had the worst cultivation base, has entered the middle stage of the Yuanying stage. Yang Chun originally thought that he and Li Cheng were the two with the lowest realm, but when he looked closely, he found that he was the only one in the early stage of the Yuanying stage. Li Cheng didn't know when he quietly entered the realm of the middle stage of the Yuanying stage. His cultivation was getting more and more unfathomable. Only your cultivation base is the lowest. Li Cheng seemed to see through Yang Chen's thoughts, and he smiled and said, if you don't hurry up, you will have to look at the faces of a few sisters-in-law. The joke was a joke, but Yang Chen also had to pay attention to this problem. It was not that he wanted face, it was really that he refined the entrance of the immortal beheading stage in the dream recalling great law, and the cultivation of his body's spiritual power fell behind a lot. It was impossible to sense the specific situation of the body in the dream. Yang Chun discovered in reality that his body had reached a bottleneck and was in a state of urgent need to break through. Not to mention, in the battle with Li Cheng, the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, he didn't know how many heavy blows he had suffered, and his skin and flesh were much stronger than before. Even the weak internal organs, under tens of thousands of internal organ shocks, were unconsciously tempered by the body, refining technique, and entered the realm of breakthrough. Such an opportunity, if he didn't seize it, Yang Chun would be an idiot. After hurriedly greeting Li Cheng and the four women, Yang Chun quickly entered a state of retreat. The main purpose of this retreat was the yellow, turbaned strongman body refining technique. With the tempering of the battle with Li Cheng, it was even more effective than Yang Chen's boring practice of the body refining technique for decades. In less than half a year, the yellow turbaned strongman body refining technique rushed to the peak of river-turning strength. His entire body's flesh, blood, bones, and internal organs had undergone a complete transformation. Compared to his original middle stage, he was at least twice as strong. Whether it was in terms of strength, endurance, or the density of his bones, they had all increased by at least 2 times. His pure physical strength was already beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even in the immortal world, only a few yellow turban warriors could reach this level. The toughness of his body simply surpassed that of many ordinary magic treasures. An ordinary flying sword wouldn't be able to cause any damage. It wouldn't even be able to pierce through the skin. Even if Yang Chun did not use the Dragon Clan Golden Bell to protect his body, the physical body of the peak river-turning power was enough to withstand at least the powerful attack of the late Deshang stage. The higher the level of the body refining technique, Yang Chen's body seemed to have more luck. The original pure strength would bring some effects on the speed. After entering the peak river-turning power, the reaction speed of the muscles almost doubled. He believed that if he fought with Li Cheng again, Li Cheng would definitely feel the terrifying attack speed. This benefit alone made Yang Chun happy from ear to ear. It must be known that those yellow turban strongmen in the immortal world, if they wanted to cultivate from the high river turning power to the peak, it was impossible without hundreds of years of hard work. The immortal body had the power of the immortal body refining technique, but the difficulty was doubled. The improvement of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique directly affected the cultivation of spirit power. The changes in the body would be directly reflected in the cultivation of spirit power. Yang Chen's stagnation in the early Yuanying stage finally loosened. Under Yang Chen's efforts, he finally broke through the bottleneck and entered the next realm. At the moment of breaking through the middle Yuanying stage, Yang Chun suddenly had an epiphany. Li Cheng's pure and powerful spirit power and spiritual awareness would be the direction of Yang Chen's cultivation. In the past, he only considered the improvement of the cultivation base. Although there was also refining the spirit power and spiritual awareness, it was not the main direction. From Li Cheng, Yang Chun saw the huge benefits after purification and condensation, and it was still too late to adjust in time. You must know that as the cultivation base gets higher and higher, if you want to refine the spirit power and spiritual awareness, it will take at least 10 times or even dozens of times more energy than when the cultivation base is low. The lower the realm, the better the effect and the less time it will take. This point was the same as the cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. The more tribulations that have been experienced, the stronger the body, the more difficult it would be to change in the future. The same was true for spirit power and spiritual awareness. So it was best to take advantage of the current awareness to mend the pen after the sheep was lost. The cultivation method of the original spirit power in his hand, Yang Chun originally planned to use it when he hit the bottleneck, but now it seemed that it was not necessary. In the battle with Li Cheng, Yang Chun also found that although his own spirit power attack was strong, after all, there were several kinds of spirit power that were not the original spirit power, and they could not compete with Li Cheng's spirit power at all. When resisting, it was the few kinds of non-original spirit power that collapsed first. Now that he realized this, Yang Chun no longer reserved. At the end of the retreat, Yang Chun called the 4 women in front of him. The 4 women all cultivated a kind of original spirit power, which was in line with their own attributes. Gao Yu cultivated the 10th water true secret art. Shi Shanshan cultivated the 7th metal true secret art. Sun Qingxue cultivated the 1st wood true secret art, and Gong Sunling cultivated the 5th earth true secret art. In Yang Chen's hands, He now had all the other cultivation methods except the third fire true secret art, and the original spirit power was still short of the second wood true essence. Speaking of it, except for Sun Qingshue's would attribute second would true essence, the other three women already had the conditions to cultivate the second kind of original spirit power. Gao Yu first got the ninth water true secret art and the ninth water spiritual liquid, and Shi Shanshan got the eighth metal true secret art and the eighth metal spiritual liquid. Gong Sunling and Sun Qingxue were a little regretful. There was no second wood true essence, and the sixth earth true essence was only the amount of one person's cultivation. Relatively speaking, the sixth earth true secret art was not a big problem, as long as Yang Chun cultivated it, and then Gong Sunling through double cultivation, it was enough for Gong Sunling to cultivate it. The last time the fifth earth true secret art was cultivated like this. The only one who was a little disappointed was the youngest Sun Qingxue. She was now the one with the lowest cultivation base, and because of the lack of second wood true essence, she could not cultivate the second wood true secret art. Everyone had it, but she did not, and she seemed a little depressed. Chapter 1071. Little Shui, it's not that my husband is biased, but I really haven't found it yet. Yang Chun could only comfort Sun Qingxue alone. It couldn't be helped, whether it was the memory of his previous life or the Immortal Executioner's platform. There was no news of the Imu true essence. Even if Yang Chun was strong, he couldn't cook without rice. It doesn't matter, husband. Sun Qingxue was not that kind of stingy person. Otherwise, she would not be accepted by Shi Shanshan. As a cultivator, she naturally knew that this path of fate couldn't be forced, so she only lost for a while and recovered. Speaking of which, Yang Chun was also in a bad mood. He had always treated the four women in a relatively balanced manner, but this time, because he didn't find the Imu true secret art, it made Sun Qingxue regret. I have already cultivated the first with true secret art. People can't be so greedy. Sun Qingxue leaned on Yang Chen's arms and in turn enlightened Yang Chun. She also saw that Yang Chun seemed to be somewhat upset because he couldn't find the Imu true secret art. Husband, don't worry about it. Sun Qingxue was open-minded. If it wasn't for Yang Chun, she could only rely on the devil's tribulation to abolish her own cultivation base and recultivate. Moreover, it could only be those would attribute cultivation methods of the Blue Cloud sect, and it was impossible to come into contact with the first wood true secret art. Now that she had the first wood true secret art, Sun Qingxue was already very satisfied. Don't worry, I will definitely find the Imu true essence. Yang Chun tightened his arm around Sun Qingxue and gave her a promise. Even if I don't consider you, I will not lack a Great Een and Yang 5-element secret art. Great Een and Yang 5-element secret art, what is that? Sun Qingxue was curious and couldn't help but ask. Not only Sun Qingxue, but even Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, and Gong Sunling were equally curious. Several pairs of eyes looked over at the same time, waiting for Yang Chun to explain. It can't be? Li Chun was not far away. Of course, he also heard Yang Chen's words. He suddenly realized something and looked at Yang Chun in disbelief. Don't tell me you want to cultivate all of your spiritual source? Li Cheng's words made all the women understand the meaning of this great Yin Yang 5-element secret art. They couldn't help but be greatly surprised. All of them looked at Yang Chun in shock. Everyone knew that Yang Chun had reached the all-attribute foundation establishment stage, and everyone also knew that he had reached the all-attribute core condensation stage. However, the women only thought that Yang Chun had cultivated 5 kinds of spiritual power. Although they had cultivated the same attribute of spiritual power as Yang Chun during the dual cultivation, the women only thought that it was a combination of 5 elements. They did not expect that it turned out to be a combination of Yin and Yang. The simultaneous cultivation of the 5 elements and the simultaneous cultivation of Yin and Yang were 2 completely different concepts. Similarly, there were 2 completely different difficulties. This didn't even need any explanation. The difference between cultivating 5 kinds of spiritual power and 10 kinds of spiritual power at the same time could be imagined in terms of quantity. Doubling the number meant at least 10 times more difficulty. when they thought that Yang Chun was actually cultivating yin and yang and the five elements, and his spiritual power was still the same as everyone else, just a little behind, the women couldn't help but have the urge to hit the wall. In addition to Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue, and Gong Sunling were recognized as cultivation geniuses in their respective sect, but they only majored in one kind of spiritual power. In this case, they were only a little ahead of Yang Chun, especially Shi Shanshan. When she knew Yang Chun, she had already begun to condense her Dan, at least 100 more years of cultivation. But now, not only was she caught up by Gong Sunling, but also by Yang Chun. Gong Sunling was fine. The characteristics of the mountain river geographical map were equivalent to countless masters helping Gong Sunling. Being surpassed by Gong Sunling, Shi Shanshan was not discouraged. But Yang Chun cultivated less than her for 100 years, and at the same time cultivated 10 kinds of spiritual power. With such speed, if Shi Shanshan was a rare genius in 1,000 years, then what was Yang Chun? Evildoer? In the past, when Shi Shanshan was alone and used Yang Chun to decline those young talents, I don't know how many people persuaded Shi Shanshan not to be dragged down by Yang Chun, a mediocre person. Now that I think about it, how funny those people were. If Yang Chun was considered mediocre, then what about those people? Pigs? Fortunately, now Yang Chun was Shi Shanshan's husband, and before that, Yang Chun used an absolute way to overwhelm Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan did not have much unconvinced thoughts. It was just that when she thought of this fact, she felt an unreal feeling. I have this plan. Yang Chun answered Li Cheng's question with affirmative words, and also frankly told Li Cheng, for the time being, I still lack the third fire true secret art and the second wood true essence. If I can find these two, I can basically complete the great yin and yang five-element secret art of this younger brother. In this regard, Li Cheng's response was to directly extend his right hand and then raise a big thumb. After holding it in front of Yang Chun for a while, he said to Yang Chun with contempt, "Pig brain." Yang Chun did not have any reaction, but the four women had already raised their eyebrows. Although the one who spoke was their husband's sworn brother, it did not prevent them from looking at Li Cheng coldly. Their husband was so amazing, but he even said that he had a pig brain. What did it mean? Does Big Brother think that the origin of spirit power can't be cultivated at the same time? Yang Chun was very impressed by Li Cheng's cultivation base. He did not know what method he used to purify the spirit power to that point. Since Li Cheng said so, there must be his reason. Yang Chun decisively ignored Li Cheng's words and humbly asked for advice. Whether the origin of spirit power can be cultivated at the same time, this is not a problem. Unexpectedly, Li Cheng did not have much to say on this issue. Since you have cultivated, there is no trouble, there will be no problem. Then Big Brother's meaning. Yang Chun was a little confused. Li Cheng scolded him for having a pig brain. What did this mean? You don't believe me when I say that you have a pig brain. You have collected so much origin of spirit power. Li Cheng scolded him again. Take a good look around and think with your pig brain. Why is the spiritual power of the Earth Meridian exhausted in such a big place? As soon as Li Cheng asked this question, Yang Chun suddenly seemed to catch something. Without saying anything, he flew up and began to observe carefully in the air. The four women were also unwilling to be left behind. They all rushed Yang Chun into the air and began to observe. The place where the mental demon sect was sealed was almost surrounded by various plants. Previously, everyone was focused on the treasures of the mental demon sect, but they ignored these ordinary plants. Now, everyone discovered that there were very few trees that belonged to the first wood. Almost all of them were vines and herbs of the emu category. Since the array that sealed the mental demon sect had not failed, it meant that the spiritual power of the Earth Meridian was enough. Why would the spiritual meridian here be exhausted? Yang Chen suddenly had an idea. Could it be that in this invisible underground, there is a large array that collected all kinds of spiritual liquid used to collect the emu spiritual liquid? Chapter 1072. This huge area had all the conditions for the production of the second wood true essence. The area was large enough there were enough second wood, and the spiritual power was abundant. Speaking of the abundance of spiritual power, of course, those dried-up spiritual veins seemed a bit abnormal. But on the other hand, wasn't the spiritual power concentrated in the second, wood true essence? Whether it was the first wood true essence or the second wood true essence, those monsters that became monsters with spiritual wisdom would not produce it. Only the naturally growing first wood and second would form a trace over a long period of time. If he wanted to collect it, he must use a certain collection formation. This area, because it was sealed, there was no demonic chi invasion, and there was no second wood monster beast, which fully met the conditions. The more Yang Chen observed, the more inclined his heart was to this point. However, the inclination could not be certain, but if Li Cheng was added, then there was basically a 90% certainty. If this was the case, then those guys worked hard to find any cultivation method or magic weapon. It was purely buying the casket and returning the pearls. The real treasure, one was the origin history of the heart demon sect that Yang Chen found, and the other was the hidden second wood true essence. As for the cultivation method of refining the space point, it was only a speculated cultivation method. For the time being, it could only prove a small part of the first half. The latter part still needed time to prove, and it was impossible to judge whether it was a big benefit. Please give us detailed instructions, Big Brother. Yang Chen had a characteristic after his rebirth. That was, he was humble, and he would never pretend to understand. So when he couldn't judge the specific location, Yang Chen would never hesitate to ask for advice from people who understood. The four women hadn't figured out what Li Cheng was talking about for the time being, but they all followed Yang Chen and surrounded Yang Chen and Li Cheng, waiting for Li Cheng's guidance. In this area, it is likely that there is a large array to collect the second wood true essence. Li Cheng did not keep them guessing and said directly. As soon as these words came out, the girls exclaimed, especially Sun Qingxue. She was surprised and didn't know what to do. Now, everyone finally understood why Yang Chen was scolded by Li Cheng for having a pig's brain when he was comforting Sun Qingxue. If it weren't for Li Cheng's sensitivity, perhaps everyone would have easily let go of this most precious benefit. But it was not too late now. The women did not have the urgency to cultivate. All of them were waiting for Li Cheng, waiting for him to point out the possible place to collect the array formation. According to Yang Chen's judgment, if this array was to exist, it would definitely be underground. The situation above ground could be seen at a glance, and there was no trace of an array at all. Moreover, the spiritual power was exhausted, which was definitely not the appearance of the second wood true essence. But the underground was so big, and there was no spiritual power escaping. How could he find the Imu true essence that might exist? Li Cheng couldn't do anything about it. He just judged that there was likely to be second wood true essence based on the situation here, but he didn't know where it was. Listening to Li Cheng and Yang Chen's words, the four women were somewhat discouraged. Was there anything more depressing than knowing there was a treasure but not being able to find it? Don't worry. Take your time to find it. Yang Chen was not that impatient. One man's plan was short, and everyone's plan was long. Even if they couldn't find it, weren't there many helpers? With so many masters, even if we dig 3 feet into the ground, are we afraid that we won't be able to find it? Yang Chen hurriedly pointed in several directions, and the women understood. Weren't those masters who entered the mental demon sect looking for cultivation methods and magic weapons? However, could those things compare to the original spiritual power of the Imu true essence? These many exhausted spiritual veins have been sealed for tens of thousands of years. How much original spiritual power had been accumulated? Yang Chen didn't believe that those guys wouldn't be tempted after knowing it. It was easy to spread the news, as long as a few people put on a different search appearance. First, they would find a random direction to explore, and let those old devils know that they were looking for some places where there was no possibility of the mental demon sect's relics, and they would soon attract the attention of those old devils. What are you looking for? Just as everyone pretended to be immersed in searching carefully, a very gentle and attractive voice interjected. This person's voice was very comfortable, and they couldn't help but feel a sense of trust. It was as if the natural tone of a family was easy to make people defenseless. Imu true essence. Yangchen almost blurted out, but then he immediately realized something and quickly covered his mouth. Li Cheng and the women quickly gathered together and then put on a defensive posture. Is there Imu true essence here? As the gentle voice sounded again, at least 10 old devils appeared around them, distributed in all directions, and surrounded everyone. Sun Qingxue immediately activated the black tortoise shield to protect everyone. The two sides once again formed a standoff. Needless to say anything else, as long as they said that they were looking for the Imu true essence, these old devils were all knowledgeable people, and it was easy to infer from the many traces shown in this sealed place. Before, everyone just didn't think in this direction. Now that Yang Chun and the others reminded them, they suddenly felt that it made sense. The ones who really found the cultivation methods and magic weapons were the dozen or so old devils who came in first, and most of the others were just picking up the scraps. Although they also found a lot of materials or magic weapons that had been passed down to this day, they had little to do with controlling the heart demons. These old guys have been staying here. On the one hand, they wanted to try their luck and see if there were any fish that had escaped the net. On the other hand, they also intended to find some opportunities to seize from the hands of others. Moreover, there was no demonic chi here. Everyone used this place to cultivate without any interference and consolidate their cultivation base. Now they suddenly discovered that there was probably the existence of the Imu true essence, the original spiritual power. Suddenly, the old guys no longer had any plans to cultivate and began to search for it. Even Yang Chun and the others didn't pay attention to them. No one was a fool, especially these old devils who had lived for God knows how many years. Who knew how much Imu true essence was left behind after being sealed here for tens of thousands of years? But one thing was certain, even if they were given a lot of it to each of them, it would not be less than their share. At first, there were more than a dozen old devils who knew about it, but after a few days, more and more old devils knew about it. Finally, all the old guys knew that there was probably the Imu true essence hidden here. So a large group of old devils began the process of digging 3 feet into the ground to find the Imu true essence. Yang Chun and the others, in this army, were not eye-catching at all.